Hey everybody, and welcome to another live stream of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. You're joining us on YouTube and Facebook, and we're grateful for that. Thanks for being here. You can send in the questions that you have all throughout this podcast. You can do so by just going down to the comments below or to the side if you're on Facebook, and you can type those in. What we'll do is after this podcast, we'll take some time to answer the questions that you have sent in, or as many of them as we can. We appreciate you, like we said, joining us, and you can also share this one out with other folks that might be interested in watching right now. We're going to talk about peaking. We're going to cover supplements versus whole foods for recovery and pre-ride nutrition. We're going to cover different ways to train Vo2 Max. We're going to cover CrossFit games. Nate's getting ready for Leadville, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Plenty of different things. So anyways, it's going to be fun. If you know anybody interested in any of those topics, you should share this out so that other folks can join us. And with that, I reckon it's time to start the proper podcast. Welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist. The Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by Trainerroad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hey, everybody.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
This is where we answer more of your cycling and triathlon-related training or racing or equipment or anything questions. And you can submit them at trainerroad.com/podcast. If you're listening to this live on whatever podcast app you're listening to, you can subscribe. That makes sure that you won't miss episodes, or just makes it easy so that they're always there. You don't have to stream them and use your data, anything like that. You can also leave ratings or share this podcast. We'd appreciate that. You can also join us live when we record, which is usually Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific. You can join us on YouTube or Facebook. You can just go to our respective channels on those platforms and join us there. And then you can actually send in live questions, and we will answer them thereafter. A number of folks have requested that we include those in the podcast, but that's kind of the whole thing. You should join us live. It's fun that way. You can see us and interact with us. It's not just listening.
There's people who this airs at like 2 in the morning. They're
of
like,
course.
God.
But the cool thing is you can jump in after the fact and still watch it on YouTube
That's
or
true.
Facebook. So yeah, please join us. It'd be a ton of fun to have you joining us live if you can, or if not, at least through video, and you can join that way. We have a lot of things to cover. First thing I want to say is join the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group. It's already past 4,000 members. It's growing very rapidly, and there are so many topics that get put in there that are fantastic, like really cool stuff. I mean, everything from people sharing different insights they've gained with equipment setup to people doing better jobs than us at times of explaining certain things. It's fantastic. Like with 4,000 people, you get a lot of different perspectives, and it's growing rapidly all the time. Growth rate is not turning down. So you can join us. Just look for the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group, and you can find it there. We will have some announcements too as far as how we manage this community coming up soon. I don't know if Nate wants to leak anything, or we just keep it quiet. Cool. So we have some updates, though, so stay tuned.
Maybe.
For that. Exciting stuff. Yeah, maybe. And with that, too, something really quick on the Trainerroad app, which if you don't know, we have an app. We have a whole service.
What does the app do? It makes you faster.
Yes.
So now out, this has been a long time coming. I'm sorry for the wait. But on mobile, so iOS and Android, you can now scrub ahead, meaning you can put your finger when the workout is paused on the graph and jump around the workout.
Oh, cool.
So what's cool with that is sometimes you want to skip an interval, or you want to start maybe halfway through, or you got off your bike and the app kept running and you missed something and go back. So that's all live today. And the other thing is that for your custom if you complete a ride with no power data on the website, you can now put in your own TSS values instead of using our estimators. You can just type them in raw if you are we call you data scientists, and you really know your stuff.
That would be helpful in a situation where your power meter dies or something like that. And
Yep. Had it happen. I just looked at
have an idea of what you've done.
I looked at your Mauna Kea ride.
Yeah.
I think you're still like 5th or 6th.
Nice.
And there's like 30 people who have done it now.
Nice.
And for your 7-hour climb of 14,000 feet, your average power was 2 watts.
I'm quite impressed. Very aerodynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very world-class, dude.
Highly efficient.
The power of levitation. Check those things out in the app. You can check that at trainerroad.com. That's as close as we'll get. We had a conversation going people were asking if we would ever pay or charge for this podcast or sponsor it or something like that in the podcast group.
Yeah.
And we said, heavens no.
What we don't do enough is ask people to, if you share Trainerroad, it's great for us. So I think a great way to do it is to, one, either tell people that use Trainerroad, or 2, tell them about your great experience of getting fitter, or rip their legs off. That's the best way.
And we're actually, something I've realized, sorry to interrupt, Nate, something I've realized is that we don't share, basically every question that comes in, people share their story with like that use Trainerroad on how it's made them faster. I feel like we don't share that enough.
That's a bad marketing thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and a lot of it is just because, I figured in my mind, I'm like, yeah, these people want to hear their questions. But there was a poll in our Facebook group where people were talking about the biggest things they wanted to improve, like different aspects of their performance. Power output, raw FTP, like that was the highest one, right? Right below that, though, very close, was it was a number of different things. It was drive, motivation, that sort of stuff. And I feel like if we share those, that could help motivate people.
And that's a comment. We'll probably talk about this more over the coming days, or podcast. Motivation is not just, it comes and goes. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on your recovery. It depends on your nutrition. So it's not just like you're either motivated or you're not. So it's a really big topic.
Ebbs and flows, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that can help. We'll cover one of those things really quick or soon. But
two, about people saying how they got better. I think I have a feeling, and live people, post if you agree, that people. So there's some people like you, Jonathan, who their natural ability is like 4 watts per kilo, right? And you are a special snowflake. You're very. I'm looking at the data of all of our users, and you're at the very top end, even when you're not trained, which is annoying.
Right.
But I think most people, there's a big bell curve around. Like most people are between 2 to 3 watts per kilo or 3 to 4 watts per kilo, and kind of 3 is like the median. So I think what people want to hear. How do I get from 3 to 3.5 or from 2.5 to 3 for an average person, right? So these are people who have been maybe cycling for a while. And a lot of those stories are that kind of thing. I know sometimes it seems like everyone has this like 4 or 5 watt per kilo. And then Chad and I were big. So not only are we at 4 watts per kilo, which is also a very small percentage of our users, and I'll share all this data. I plan on doing a big thing about the data of our users later. But since we're so heavy, our FTP relative to that 4 watts per kilo is even higher. So it can be, it can put things out of whack. So for the majority of people, like over 90% of people, probably with that high too, it's even more than that, 95. I don't know the data for sure, but I'll get back to you. Anyways, just the idea of hearing that story and of how normal people get from X to Y. Yeah, or Z. I don't know.
Yeah.
A to Z. 1 to 2.
I think it's in the end, like it's similar principles are being implemented to improve fitness, but the context or circumstances that individuals find themselves in really kind of tell the story about how it happens.
And yours is actually good because you're smart enough to know, like, I think there's a lot of people who are like you and they go, dudes, I wear my purple socks and I put it in the big gear. And everyone goes, well, Jonathan's at 4 watts per kilo and he does purple socks and puts it in the big ring. And that's how he gets faster. Right. But really, like, you're smart enough to know you have a natural ability and all your past athletic endeavors has helped solidify that. So you can use real stuff rather than just, you hear that all the time, right? You get it from pros too, who have this like 70 Vo2 Max in the 70s, and whatever they do, they're going to be faster than if you work out perfectly. If like I were to work out perfectly and probably them off the couch, they'd still beat me.
Right.
So they could do anything. Literally anything.
Speaking of that, before we get into a correction, I want to use that as a transition to something, Nate, you haven't watched. Chad and I did watch already. And that happened yesterday. It was the CrossFit Games have started, which if anybody hasn't seen that, I love watching them. They're awesome. Not just the event we'll talk about, but absolutely incredible athleticism across the board.
Just amazing.
Yeah. Makes me feel inadequate with my skinny cyclist body.
It's like watching
relatively skinny.
300? Is that what the movie was?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
like watching that where you think, I need to hit the gym. I don't have abs like that.
Yeah, I was looking at they just had like a shot of like just people around at the expo, and I was like, I don't even want to be there, man. Like I would feel so.
It's humbling. I've gone to one. It's humbling.
Yeah, right. Everybody's so crazy fit. But so last year they incorporated a cyclocross race. The course was pretty basic, and I think that's smart. This year they incorporated a criterium, which I think
sounds dangerous.
Yeah, I think
it was.
Even last year, I think that we all were saying, like, imagine if they did something like a crit. That would be terrible. That would be chaos.
That's what they did.
I don't think it was terrible. I actually think it was really cool.
It was people who don't ride bikes much, if at all, riding bikes fast, trying to be competitive in a group on a tight course it was not an easy course.
No.
There was a particularly hard turn that had a dip right after it. And people would go through it, and I was just waiting for those wheels to wash. And they saved it pretty much every time.
What were they? Good for them. What kind of bikes?
They're all on the same bike. It looked like a very baseline Trek. It was like something like so it was a red framed Trek, but I think that it came with like Tiagra components, like so base level.
Drop bars?
Drop bars and clips. They were
clipped in?
Yeah.
Wow.
21.8 pounds is what they said the bike was. They were on 28s for tires, which I thought was really good of them to put them on, because that does improve
Heavy
control
riders
a lot.
too,
Yeah, that's a good point. And keep in mind, so and I was laughing a lot during this. Like it was pretty funny as a cyclist, right?
Wait until you do like Fran or something. They're gonna laugh at you.
Oh yeah. But and then like you see them riding and you're just like, oh my goodness, cyclists are small, because you'd see the bikes look so tiny under these massive athletes, right? You saw crazy in the women's race, like just this, when that was the first race that went off, and they did 40 rider fields, and they did rows of 5, and they did individual time trials to qualify you into the seating position that you did.
Good for them.
It was really cool.
They know what they're doing.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And everyone had helmets, and then they could wear what other stuff they wanted, though. Like, so they could wear, like, some of the girls were just wearing like a sports bra. Some of the guys were wearing a tank top.
They get enormous amounts of specific clothing, and they can pick and choose, which they wear on what days.
Mm-hmm. And
all Reebok branded, I think. It's a certain pile of clothing. I don't even know if they had cycling clothing. I don't think I saw one pair of cycling shorts.
No, I don't think none of them were wearing shorts. But the races were 10 laps long on this course. The course, each lap probably took around about 1.5 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And it was a predominantly flat course, but it did have some constant just pitch to it. The turns, though, were super tricky. Like, the turns had, like, you'd do 90-degree turns, and in the center, it's like the turn you dip down coming in. Then the center, you'd have, like, a hump, and then it would dip down again. So it makes it really tricky if you're trying to pedal through turns. And kudos to so many of those athletes who were able to just pedal through the turn the whole time, carry their momentum. It was pretty cool.
We had some guys diving into turns. I mean, diving so hard that they had to affect their exit. I mean, they had to like right the bike because the turn was too sharp, and they would have like continued off the road.
They want it bad.
And weren't laying it down. I mean, I thought for sure that bike's going to wash, especially when they hit that dip. And to their credit, they saved it. Like there was a handful of crashes, and I got to say, when you crash at low speed, it does not imply low energy. These guys hit the ground, and women hit the ground so hard they bounced in most cases. I saw bikes.
Hard hits.
Oh, people did hit.
Hard crash.
Oh, like sports bras?
Lifted.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And then they have to continue with the rest of the games with road rash, right? Like, think of that.
And true to their extremely tough nature, they were right back up and on that bike and going. No thought of hanging it up.
Licking my wounds, sitting here
free lap.
looking what's going on.
One girl, woman ran across the line. Her chain probably dropped or something, but she was within maybe 100 meters of the finish, picked up her bike and trudged across.
It was very different. So, like, big takeaway here. So, first of all, there were some gnarly crashes, some huge pedal strikes, some massive high sides, like really hard crashes. And they were crashes that a normal cyclist would totally avoid, right? Like a seasoned cyclist, certainly. But the crazy thing was to see, like you said, when they crashed, these athletes are so strong and so robust that these crashes, and everybody assimilates speed with a harder crash, which, sure, you could probably generalize, but a low-energy crash, especially, not like a Nibali crash, because a Nibali crash climbing up that hill,
that was
climbing up the hill, somewhat high energy, but these guys are like back-end sliding out, catching, it tosses them up into the air, and then they slam into the ground.
Bike comes off the ground, they come off the ground.
This is the last time. We're probably on YouTube?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Somewhere. Just CrossFitGames.com.
Okay. Yeah, you can go there and watch it. But anyways, they bounced right back up. Cyclists are too fragile. And then on top of that, there were one crash I can think of wasn't involved, but there were plenty of crashes where a rider would hit another rider and take them down.
This will be the last time they do it.
And
many crashes.
One of the female competitors did damage her wrist, and that's it. That's her game. She's out.
Yeah, she's done. But the rest of the athletes, they never once held their arm up like, what did you do to me? Come on, guy. They never did anything. They just bounced, hit the ground, kept going. And I loved seeing that. Like, it was the opposite of soccer, right?
Well, we usually say cyclists are tougher.
They are tough. They are tough, and it's not that
they're tough in a different way.
It's not that they're less or more tough, but they're certainly more robust. Like, their bodies are much stronger. Their bones are probably more dense.
Yeah.
They're able to take
guaranteed.
a hit.
They're sheltered. That's it. I mean, they are padded, to say the least.
It's pretty impressive to see athletes that don't ride bikes on a bike that's entirely foreign to them in an event that's totally foreign to them.
Those was the first of 4 events. The 4th event was a marathon row. They actually had to row 26.2 miles. They took the fast men 2 hours and 45, and then they had a 4-hour time cap.
God.
I'm not sure if anybody didn't make the time cap, but the fact is they sat on a rower and pulled that thing for nearly 3 hours in the best case,
After
up
doing
to
the
4
great.
hours in the worst.
I'm still waiting for the day where the first to qualify for the games, the first event is an Ironman.
Yeah.
And that just weeds out all the people, because then all the skinny people can do it.
That would be brutal,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Wouldn't be very fun to watch.
No, but they it was really impressive. There were tactics. In fact, we were watching the race, and a handful of us here at the office. It was long after hours, Nate, so no worries. We were watching it, and we actually picked out the winner. Really smart racing, tactical drafting, making sure that she was never showing her nose in the wind, and then she ended up sprinting over the top. There was a breakaway in the men's race.
She was doing Norwegian.
It was fun to watch, man.
Cool.
It was really cool. So, anywho, check that out and give those athletes some credit. They did something pretty cool. If you saw cyclists going in trying to do a single one of their workouts, it would be much more funny, I think. So, a correction from last episode, or not a correction, perhaps just an addition, I guess. We talked about TUEs and testosterone. Yep. And we didn't mention the specific case, like for transgender athletes, they may be able to have greater access to TUEs.
Yep. So you can get, someone emailed me, transgender men can get a TUE. It's a process, but you can get it. But it goes on the other side too. You have to get it. Mm-hmm. You think that, I won't be, this isn't going to apply to me, but they don't care. Yep. The other thing that I want to talk about, but we didn't mention, is there are all about raising testosterone. Yeah. There are all of these supplements that you can buy online, the test booster and all this kind of stuff.
Please don't.
And they're super dangerous because I think they fall into 2 categories. One, there's always these new products that come out and they actually have something illegal in them. So they do really work. They're really popular for about 6 months and then they get pulled.
They're not FDA approved. They're often unethical. I mean, just some of the shortcuts or ways they'll find to weave in performance enhancing, but at the detriment to your good health.
Mm-hmm. So what happens is that you could take something that is over the counter and you could get popped for doping. And then the other side is if they work, they're banned. And if they don't work, they're not banned. Yeah. So there's other products that you buy and it's almost by definition, unless it just came out, it doesn't work. Because if it does significantly improve your performance, it will get banned in sport.
It's a performance-enhancing drug.
Exactly. And then it's just a matter of time before it gets banned. And like I said, there's that small window. But a lot of times it's something that has already been banned gets put in there secretly. Mm-hmm. And then the company makes a whole bunch of money because everyone wants to buy it for 6 months. And then it gets pulled to shelves.
It's a cash grab, yeah.
Some quick little hardware tips that we wanted to give you, and then we're going to transition into talking about Leadville really quickly and what you're doing for that. But KOM Cycling, it's a company, and they sent us actually a couple of these items. A podcast listener sent it in for us to check it out. And basically, and it was something that I had already purchased on Amazon. We have this blog post that you can find on our blog, Trainerroad, or blog.trainerroad.com, about how to make your custom phone case. So then you can just twist lock your phone case into your Garmin, because then you don't have to have multiple mounts, and it's kind of a pain. So when you're training with Trainerroad, it's easy to do that. But this is way easier. It cuts out all the work that's in that blog post. It genuinely has a sticker on the back, and you just stick something onto the back of your phone case, and then you can just put it right in.
I'm going to say this a different way because I want to push this guy's product because it's so awesome.
Okay,
here's the problem is you want to use Trainerroad, and you either have to put a computer on a desk or your phone doesn't really fit anywhere, and your phone needs a stand, or people do music stands or something like that, or you get a Wahoo desk, which is very nice.
Or you'd have to put multiple device mounts on your bars, which is a pain too. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put a quad lock or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what this does, it's a little Garmin mount with a sticker on the back, and you can stick this to a existing iPhone case. Mm-hmm. So I have it on a $8 iPhone case. Mm-hmm. You put it on there. And then I just pop my phone in that case, and I now have it right in line where my Garmin would be. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have any desk or anything. You can put your bottles below. And the cool thing about this is, at least last time I checked, it's $12.
That's pretty awesome.
You should be charging $20.
20,
totally.
For sure. Yeah.
Especially since now you're going to get a mad rush of sales.
Yeah.
But they asked us, and I was like, heck yes, I want this.
Yeah.
I actually thought 4 or 5 years ago, when you did that video, I'm like, we could totally build this.
Manufacture one.
We thought about it,
Yeah, but it was one of those things that I always talk about is you want to focus, right?
Yeah,
We don't want to have inventory and do all that kind of crazy
Dilute our
stuff.
product.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. The other thing they make too is like a handy tubeless injector. And I've always been the type of person that doesn't put the sealant into so when you run tubeless tires, I'll take a step back. When you run tubeless tires, you have rim tape sealing the bed, and then you have a valve stem that actually just pokes through that rim tape, and then you tighten it down with a nut. You don't have a tube with like a normal stem, so just so people understand that. And then you put this latex sealant in your wheel, so then it can seal up any leaks, anything like that. Mm-hmm. And seal it when you get a flat. The tricky thing, though, a lot of the time is directions will tell you to just put that sealant, it'll come with like a little hose attachment, and you'll put it over that valve stem. You remove the valve core, then like squeeze it in, but that sealant leaves residue inside your valve stem, and then it can clog up. So then every time you pump, you play this fun game where you pump, then you wait for a few seconds for the pump to like normalize pressures, then you can actually see what you're doing. It's annoying. So what this does, this little tubeless sealant injector, is it doesn't go around the same company, KOM Cycling. It doesn't go around the outside. It actually pokes down deep inside through the valve stem. So that way, and then it injects it into the tire from down below.
It's
so
slick.
That way you don't have any issues with it clogging in your valve stem.
So that is so cool.
Yeah, finally somebody got it right.
Yeah.
I saw it, but I haven't used it yet.
Yep.
So someone else put Stan's race sealant in my tires for Leadville, which is, I read about it. I guess that it has the same liquid, but the beads inside, they're twice as big.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to seal bigger holes. But the problem with that is if it gets in your valve stem, it clogs it.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like it will seal a hole that big.
Yeah.
So this would help that. So we had to do it through the tire, and it's not as easy to see how much you put in, but I could just inject it right down in.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the tire side of things, how I've done it traditionally is that I put my tire mostly on, and then I leave, like a 6-7 inch section of that tire off the bead, put it in, and then pop it onto the bead. The only problem with that is a lot of the time you have to do it in a somewhat compromised position because you're trying to not let the sealant leak out. Mm-hmm. So then what you end up doing is maybe you end up pushing a little hard with your tire lever or doing something else, and then you could end up messing up your rim tape, and then you have a leak that you can't figure out.
And it's messy.
a pain. Yeah, and it's messy. So this is, you put the tire on all the way around, and then you take your valve core out, you stick this injector inside the stem, put the sealant in there, then put your valve core back in, pump it up, and you're set. It's really cool. So kudos to podcast listeners with awesome products like that. And with that, you're getting your tubeless tires ready because you are going to Leadville.
I am.
When are you going to Leadville?
You sound like it's an exciting thing.
It's more like a punishment.
So Chad and I guess we should say, first of all, we're not doing it.
No, we're going though.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So my knees kept me off. The rehab's going well. Chad.
I just didn't want to.
I don't blame you.
Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah,
I don't want to go.
I don't blame you.
You didn't want to ride. You don't want to go either?
Oh, no. I didn't want to ride. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So we're going to be like your Swannies. One of the things that you have been talking about and we talked about previously on the podcast is when to go up. And really the point that we're getting at is elevation and adapting to that elevation as quickly as possible or at the ideal time frame. When are you planning on going up?
Yeah, so originally it was going to be flying Thursday, have Friday, race Saturday, which is probably the worst because it's not the same day, but you're going to be super tired. Mm-hmm. So kudos to my lovely wife. I was like, and to a listener who's letting us stay at his place.
Yes. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. I said, what do you feel about me flying in on Sunday and being gone the whole week? And she's like, Sunday? So you're going to be gone for a whole week? She says, yep. And she goes, sounds good. It's important race. Go do it. I was like,
that's
fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. So kudos to her. So I'm going to go a week ahead of time.
Why are you going a week ahead? We should cover that. I know that we've kind of talked about it before. We should just cover it briefly.
What I want to do is have my body some time to build more red blood cells.
From, I guess traditional thought was that if you went up at a certain period of time, even within a week, that might not be ideal. You'd probably want to give yourself 2 weeks, something like that. Mm-hmm. However, Team Sky recently, or there was a study published with Team Sky.
Was it a study or just the coach who said it?
It might just be
what happened in Tenerife.
Yeah, just the coach said it, I think.
So insights that were shared. Yeah. And in this case, they saw that actually the first day that they got there was the worst, but it got notably better each day.
3 days in, they had a substantial decrease in the
believe I've read this recently. So at first it was a 70-watt loss for the riders, right?
Yeah.
And they're probably 400. Everyone's right around 400 probably, or higher. And then after 3 days, it was a 40 watt loss. Then after 10, it was almost no difference. So I'm really putting a lot of faith in this, right?
Yeah, if anything, it'll be improvement. It's not going to be as bad as what our original plan was to go down.
Yeah, so either say like the best would be 3 weeks or same day. But I'm hoping, and based on this, that 1 week is better than 1 day.
2 days.
Yeah,
Or one,
it's pretty much 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the tricky part about this is you're always trying to time it. You can't just think of the elevation stuff, but you also have to think about, if you had tried to arrive the same day, first of all, Leadville's a really early starting race, and it's way up in the mountains.
Yeah, so you won't
It's
have
not
just
feasible.
traveled, which would take a lot of the wind out of your sails.
Yeah. Like if we stayed in Denver, we'd have to wake up at like 2 a.m. or something to get there on time.
That's not a great way to start such a long day.
Yep.
So we can talk from a principle-based approach here, but what do you want from these two absolutely awesome Swannies that
Okay.
you'll have?
So let's talk about the goal first, guys. Sub 9. You go sub 9, you get a big belt buckle.
Yeah, you can do it.
To all the listeners who told me that's impossible, you go, what do you call it, pound sand or something?
Kick rocks, no.
Kick
much
rocks,
kinder.
okay.
Kick rocks, yeah.
Kick rocks. That's the
Yeah.
Jonathan way of saying that. That's what I'm going to try to do. I think it's within the realm of possibility. And looking at other rides, so you can go on to someone's like Strava ride and you can look at their moving time and then their total time. And then the difference between that would be the amount of times that they stopped. And I did this for my own rides, and you can kind of see how long you spent at aid stations or ahead of mechanical. And I think with you guys' help, I can save 15 minutes by Swannies. And I have a whole spreadsheet of strategic places to put you guys. And I want to have like Tour de France hand-ups where I kind of just cycle by. I throw my bottles in the ground. Someone yells at me for littering. But you guys are going to pick them up right there. I'm going to kind of throw them at you.
Yeah.
And then you're going to hand me the bottles. I'm going to put them in. The next person, I'm going to throw my trash on the ground. Someone else is going to probably write my number down, disqualify me.
We'll pick it up.
You'll pick it up. It'll be right next to you. And then you'll hand me the gels. I'll put them in.
Yep.
And I'll get going.
Cool.
The only
Can
two.
we give you a push, too?
I don't need a push. I don't need any pushes, guys.
Bottles can be sticky at times. Just joking.
Yeah, in a car.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same strategy of nutrition that I did for Untitled Trail 100, which is I kind of have two different options per hour. One is the Martin 320, a bottle of water, but I also might take one SIS gel, Science and Sport gel, at the same time. And then my other option is 2 bottles of Scratch, a Honey Stinger chew bag, and 2 SIS gels. Now, I'm adding an SIS gel to both of those because I think I can eat more. At Untitled Trail 100, I ate extra food on the aid stations. And the thing that people don't talk about, too, when you do gels, how often do you get all 90 calories,
gel.
right? You get like 90% or 80%
Those
of it.
SAS ones are pretty good, though, because they empty really easily.
It is easier, but this is mountain biking, so it's not like
you don't have the time.
I'm not going to roll it up like a
Sure.
toothpaste and just be like,
Yeah.
I'm going
Hands
to
off
just
the
be
bars, taking your time.
like, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of, you take in your hand and you kind of just scrunch it as much and then suck it out like a, what do the kids eat? The Otter Pops.
Yeah, Otter
It's
Pops.
kind of like a big Otter Pop.
Yeah.
And then I can always just start eating less if my stomach feels bad.
My theory on a lot of why you see like such like a positive splitting to a huge degree at Leadville with people's performances. Negative split means that you would be faster in the second half. By positive split, I mean that you'd be slower in the second half.
And it's net downhill.
Yeah.
A lot.
Is I think that people don't, when you're at high elevation and it's dry and it's cool, relatively cool, you don't drink as much.
You're not
You
prompted
don't
to
feel
drink
the
as
need.
much, yeah. Which is why a hydration plan is super important in a case like this.
Yeah, and a lot of the time you see people just eating at aid stations and it's also when you're at elevation, you'll feel not great. You're going to feel bad. So, and that's not just like your legs will feel slow. Like your body feels not good. Yeah. So a lot of the time you won't feel like eating as a result of that. And I think that honestly, fueling is it's going to be a huge component.
I'm going full triathlete.
Heck yeah.
I'm just doing it. And looking at, there's a Leadville Facebook group of participants, and everyone's like, yeah, you should be at about a bottle an hour. So and these are mountain bike bottles, usually smaller, right?
Yeah.
So over 2 hours is 2 bottles. I usually do that in an hour. So twice the drinking rate. And it does start cold around 40, but it gets up to 70. And that's what Jonathan's point is. It feels cold, so you don't drink.
Yeah.
but you're actually sweating.
Yeah.
And especially if you start and you get bundled up, then you can really sweat like it's 80, but you don't notice it because your face is cold still and your hands are cold.
How often? What's the frequency you expect to see us?
I think there's 4 times that I can see you guys.
Okay.
Over 2
cool.
aid stations.
That's good. Every
But the
25 miles?
No. It's not every 25 miles.
It's not that. No.
The 2 aid stations are really close together. If I have this right, they're like, it's about 15 miles apart.
Oh, okay.
And then the other ones, I'm just going to have to go with what they have on the course
Okay.
or carry extra stuff in between. The other thing that's slightly interesting, maybe not really interesting, at the end, there's one aid station at the end. It's an express aid station that you guys aren't allowed to be there at. So there's a pipeline aid station, and then it's kind of a net uphill, and it's kind of a long time to the end, about almost 3 hours, 2.5. And I was thinking about you guys would then hand me, or at least have the option to hand me the Useway hydration pack, and I might do 160 Marten in it, so kind of the half potency.
Hand you as in you're going to put it on the fly?
Yeah, I mean,
You'll stop really quick.
Yeah, it'll take 10 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are planning on stopping?
Well, for this one, and bathroom breaks. So if I go sub 9, let's say I go 8:59.
Yeah.
If I don't go to the bathroom once,
You will not have drank enough.
yeah, exactly, right? I'll probably be cramping and have a bad day.
Do you want me? So we could bring extra packs. I don't know when. Are you just planning on using a pack during that last section?
Yeah, you know what? Let's bring an extra bladder and
Well, I can bring my pack. It's the same pack.
same size.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's
then
bring
that
it
way
just in case.
we can bring that. So then
We'll have choices.
multiple packs is I think always a smart choice if you can, because then you don't have to worry about changing out a bladder. It's just drop one bag, put a new bag on.
If for some reason I need it, it'll be nice, or I make a different game day decision.
I got to disagree with one thing though. I don't think you should have to pee. I mean, theoretically, if you hydrate properly and your water's not making it to the bladder, it's actually being absorbed where it's supposed to be absorbed, you shouldn't have to pee. And on my best days where I've hydrated right, I haven't had to.
So that's like the Thanos way, where everything's perfectly balanced.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I see where you're going.
But I'd rather be. I doubt that will happen, where everything's just perfect.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If you're perfect and there's nothing else, you'll probably be okay. But over 9 hours, I'd rather over than under.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
A performance should be better along the course if you're slightly over than slightly under.
And with all the amount of salt I'm going to be eating with all these things, and I'm also going to have you guys have salt pills in the Swanee pack.
Cool.
I don't have no worry about
Salt pills or some form of sodium?
Salt pills, salt stick tabs. I might try something else. I don't know, but
I
just in
sense
case.
disagreement from Chad.
That's we've
I know
been over
Chad hates this.
No, just the chloride doesn't balance right.
What was I saying? I forget. Thanks, Chad.
Just trying to help you out, man.
So we'll have
no risk of hypernatremia, which is
that's what
you
you're
drink
going for.
too much water and you can die.
Yeah. So Chad and I are going to have one question, actually, something that was brought up in what you just said. Can we not support you at any point during the course? We
I don't know.
Only support at aid stations?
I think so, but I don't know.
Should probably look into that.
I know there's you're not.
Someone's typing a reply to that right now.
Sure.
I was reading the athlete guide, and there's a big section about it, and then the Fat Cyclist has a whole 2-part podcast about it that I was going to require you guys to read or to listen to.
Yeah, Eldon. Yeah,
You should just listen to it on the way out when you're driving.
I'm on that podcast.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I know. I heard you.
I should. He actually put out this morning. He put basically a step-by-step course recon course at 3 a.m. this morning. So, but he put out a whole from beginning to end course preview too. So,
but you guys can't drive on the dirt, I think, and I'm confused. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it all out. Bottom line, Chad and I are going to be the best Swanees you've ever had. So. We'll make pro riders jealous that are there. So
I figure I've been watching some Rick and Morty, and I feel like Chad's going to be like Rick, the drunk guy, just woo, go Nate. And Jonathan will be handing me stuff.
It's also quite possible. So,
very probable, actually.
Okay, so with that, let's jump into Joel's praise. He says this. So this is the story where he used Trainerroad and how it worked. Hopefully this can serve as some motivation for all of you. He says, I don't actually have a question, just didn't know where else to send this and wanted to make sure you guys saw it. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the awesome products you guys put out. Our pleasure. He says, I started listening to your podcast a year and a half ago and have learned so much. Last fall, I started to use Trainerroad because I love the podcast so much. And wow, that has made such a huge difference for me. Never done structured training before and was blown away by how well it worked. Not only did I see a good increase in fitness, but also the way I could utilize it. Yeah, that's a commonly overlooked thing. It's not just about the numbers, but
it changes the whole game.
It's pretty fun to be able to use your fitness in unique ways. He says, I noticed such a huge difference this year in my ability to put out a huge effort and then recover quickly while still working hard in races. The combination of listening to the podcast and using the training programs and the analytics software makes it as close to having a real coach as possible. You guys have helped me out so much, and not only with on the bike stuff, but also with taking recovery time and nutrition. And he says, because of everything I've gained from listening to you guys and using your products, I was able to win my provincial road racing championship this year. Woo-hoo. Nice job. He says that it's not very deep. It doesn't matter. That's the rank that you're currently at.
Win's a win, man.
Yeah, exactly. And like
Chad State champ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of one.
Yeah.
Win's a win, Chad.
So Nate, you mentioned this recently too. Like I think we were at the Segundo or something else when people were like, people were saying like, yeah, well, I only did the short distance. Like,
oh yeah, they got like the podium because they did the 42 mile rather than the 65.
So they like kind of downplay it.
Yeah, I'm only doing this to gauge. Everyone stop it.
Yeah, don't downplay it. It's awesome. That's where you fit in at this time, or that's what you chose to race, and other people chose to race that, and that's where you're
you can
at.
line up with 100 other riders, and there's really only a small handful of them that'll rival you for the win. So who knows you weren't racing those guys? I mean, if it's at a provincial championship, I'm guessing it was the people who believe in themselves, actually have the capabilities, and you were racing against them. So.
Yeah, exactly. So good job. He says, all that to say, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks so much. Keep up the good work. So
congrats, Joel.
Should I read the PS, Nate?
It's up to you, Jonathan.
He says, I'm sure the other guys will hate to hear me say this, but Nate, you're hilarious. So you've got a fan there,
Thank
Nate.
you, Joel.
I completely agree.
Joel?
That's backhanded.
I'm on your account. Joel now has a free account with Trainerroad.
That was fast.
Yep.
Okay, let's go into the questions. This one's from Jason. He says, hey guys, I'm going to start following one of your training plans, but as a high volume athlete, I'm considering following your high volume sweet spot, sustained power build, and then 40K TT plan. My question is, if I follow your high volume plan for the 2019 season, how would I progress beyond this for the 2020 season? As to get improvements, don't I have to still increase the stress on the body? P.S. I love your podcast.
Yeah, so you don't have to look at it in terms of as stress and increasing stress. You've jacked your training stress up to a certain point, and the only way to get faster is to jack it farther than that point. That's not the only form of progression. Progression comes in numerous ways. So really, if you look at it less in terms of stress, more in terms of stimulus, it's maybe a better approach. As long as you're furthering the stimulus, then you're probably going to improve, assuming all of the things are in line, your recovery, your nutrition, all that. So just look at, for instance, the most obvious way is to simply improve your FTP. You can do the same plan over and over and over again, but if you're doing it with a higher FTP, each subsequent return to the same plan, you're probably going to increase the stimulus, which will increase the adaptation and raise your work capacity, which is what you're looking for in the case of FTP improvements, or your aerobic work capacity specifically. So don't look at it simply in terms of I've done this much stress. The only way I'm going to get stronger is to do more stress. You can shape the stimulus as long as it's outside of what your body is already accustomed to, and again, proper nutrition and restoration follow. Then you're going to improve.
I'm going to go analogy in weightlifting. I use weightlifting a lot because I think people understand that better. Mm-hmm. Let's say your max bench press is 200 pounds, so you're doing 8 reps at 140. Right? And then you get stronger and your max bench press is now 250 pounds and you do 8 reps at, say, 185. Mm-hmm. It's still the same percentage of your max bench reps or your max bench press, and you're still doing 8 reps, but you still get stronger. And that goes for a very long time. Yeah. And then you get to the very tip and diminishing returns.
Yeah, and that's funny. That's why, specifically because of that, because there is a limit that we can't all reach it. We all have our personal limits, but the limits of the highest end athletes are crazy high. But the point is they reach them, and they can't extend past it. If you look at classics riders, for instance, you do something like Paris-Roubaix. I was looking at the training stress for each of those. They're looking at 350 to 450 over a 6.5 hour day. That's in a single ride. And yeah, given they have some days of recovery lined up after it, but who doesn't? Grand Tour riders. Mm-hmm. So they do a 200 or 300 or even 400 TSS ride, training stress ride, and then the next day they do it again and again and again. And come weekend, they've pushed roughly, a couple thousand stress score points.
So crazy.
That's, but they're at the top end of it. They're not going to get much faster if they get faster at all.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with ultra distance triathletes who are working out 25 hours a week. They can't bump that up to 28 or 30 and necessarily see improvement.
Yeah. I mean, can I do 80 hours a week?
Yeah.
Can I do 90?
Yeah.
Or it doesn't make sense.
No, there's a limit.
The other thing that I see repeatedly all the time are people being too focused on the training stress score. Is, for instance, this will blow people's minds because people don't understand this. Let's say you do an hour workout, same warm-up, same cool-down, and you do one that is 4 10-minute intervals at threshold with recovery, or with recovery
2
intervals.
or 3 minute breaks in between.
Whatever. So that's one. Let's say you get 80 for that. And then you do the same amount of recovery, but it's before or after the interval, and you do 1 by 40 at threshold. That's the same exact training stress. But think of the difficulty.
Training stress score, because the training stress is quite different.
Think of how much stronger you'd have to be to go 1 by 40 at threshold than 4 10s. And if you built your way up to be able to do 1 by 40, you're obviously stronger. But looking at, if you just went by numbers, you'd be like, oh, I didn't change anything, but you're stronger. Yeah. So it's not the end all be all to drive 100% of your training. It is one of the factors to help you drive.
It's part of the picture, and it's useful, but it doesn't tell you everything.
So I feel like an easy way to or I should say a very simple way to sum this up is the assumption perhaps here by Jason is the fact that he needs to increase volume to get stronger. Yeah. But it's not just about increasing volume. There's plenty of ways to stress the body.
It can come to that when, for instance, you're a rider or an athlete who has 6 to 8 hours a week to train, and you pushed up against that 8-hour ceiling for a couple seasons in a row. You're only going to be able to do so much with 8 hours. So if you want to ascend to a new level, a higher level of performance, probably going to have to add another hour or two per week. At some point, you will reach an area where you can only do so much high intensity. You can only jam so many long rides into an 8-hour week, et cetera.
Looking at our users, that is a very, very, very small percentage of people.
Fractions of a percent.
Who are also optimizing those 8 hours.
Yeah.
And they're not just going out doing long, slow, easy rides for everything.
Yeah, you can't.
It is very small. So you're probably not in that boat of like, you've maximized your 8 hours. Now the only way, and you've not only have you maximized those 8 hours, your genetics won't let you go any farther unless you add an hour.
Yeah, and that's an eventuality that a lot of us won't even come to because the level that we perform at or the races in which we take part don't require us to do any more than that 6 to 8 hours. We rise to a level where we compete well in those realms. We're happy with it, and then we start to specialize. And this is another aspect of this where you just don't look at training stress, but also look at what you want to be particularly good at. That's when you start to emphasize those things in particular.
It's the watts.
Yeah. Or how you use them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So something that I think I personally have met very few people that can follow one of our high volume plans to a T and feel like it isn't enough.
It's a lot of stress, yeah.
When you look at that high volume, that's a very structured, very hard, very intentional work.
I can't do it. I want to rebrand those to, I think, super high or extremely high or insanely high, and then have a warning and be like, this is, it's dangerous, not dangerous. It's probably not for you.
It's not a good fit for too many riders.
Exactly, yeah. And I think too many riders do it thinking, oh, if I just did more this year, and I fall in the same trap, you've heard me do it on the podcast, that I will be faster. But you actually end up being slower because you burn yourself out.
And then Jason, just always remember when you're looking at just measures of improvement, we're still not looking specifically at metrics all the time. We want to improve performance. So if your performance is improving, that's the name of the game. That's the end goal for everybody. And I'll quote Greg LeMond. It's been done a million times. It never gets easier. You just go faster. Yeah. There are a lot of ways to find more speed. It doesn't have to simply be by doing more weekly stress.
Yeah. And if you're coming into specifically like a structured training plan without having much structure before, if you're coming into a Trainerroad structured training plan, your 8 hours that you previously did that week, it's going to be a very different 8 hours.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. So it's Jason, if you do give it a shot, which it sounds like you're planning on, maybe even something that we commonly recommend is that people start with a mid-volume, see how that fits in.
No, low volume.
Or low volume.
Yeah.
See how that fits into things, and then maybe you can say, okay, yeah, I can up it, and you go to a mid-volume.
Especially if you're coming from a background that didn't include any intensity.
Yeah. But do a few weeks of it too. Because 1 week, Even high volume, I'm like, I can handle one. Like after 1 week, I'm like, I can do this. And after 3 weeks, I'm like, oh.
Week 3 is so hard. Yeah, it's really
Maybe
tough.
I should try CrossFit.
Yeah, there we go, right?
It's fun, if nothing else.
Yeah. Alan's question, he says, looking ahead to 2019 and possibly attending U.S. Masters Nats. 1 second here. I need to jump in.
You jumped in on yourself.
I know. I need to stop this question. I'm
if
sorry.
I interrupt myself.
Why in the world do we not know where road national championships or mountain bike national championships are for the next year?
Good question. It's really hard to plan your season around something that hasn't been nailed down till potentially 5 months prior.
Yes.
Does
I have
it matter?
No clue.
What
Definitely
it
matters.
for mountain bike, for road? I guess, yeah, if it's flat
Totally.
or
road
hilly.
has shifted from, we can talk about this in a second, from May to as far as August.
Yes. Oh.
That's a big window.
You not knowing the date would
Yes.
be harder
Yeah.
than the location.
Really hard.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know when, and usually Mountain Bike Nationals happens in July, but it's happened anywhere from May all the way to August before as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's just nerve-wracking. Come on, USA Cycling.
Yeah, the one thing we have going in our
Figure it
favor
out.
is that when it stays in the same location, it seems to stay at the same time. So if 1 year it happened in Augusta in June, the next year it's still in Augusta, it's probably going to happen in June.
And they
Looks
usually
to be the trend.
Yeah, they usually happen in 2-year chunks, usually.
Usually, but not always.
Not always.
I feel like this is going to be live on the spot, and we're going to have to do it if I say it. But I feel like we should fly to nationals, and even if we're not doing it,
Yeah.
we should just be there and hang out and
Which
experience
nationals?
it. All of them. No, just kidding. Fat bike. Well, I think Jonathan, you want to do mountain bike nationals, right?
Yep, that's my goal
We
for
should
next year.
support him.
Yeah.
I think road would be cool too.
Yeah,
Road would be great.
I could even get behind maybe trying to compete again. I mean,
Hey.
we can talk
Yeah,
about
you
that.
should try.
We can talk about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Not me, but
That'd be
Why
sweet.
not?
It'd be sweet to do TT
We'll
nets,
see.
Mm-hmm.
crit, road.
yeah, they're all in the
Fun.
same weekend, right?
They're usually the same week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That'd be really fun.
See?
Okay, getting into this, because Alan is possibly planning on going to 2019 Masters Nats. He says, I'd love to have some ideas on a sequence of plans on Trainerroad to maximize 30 to 40K time trials in the middle of next summer. I will have a racing age of 55 next year and will focus primarily on cycling and some running thrown in for balance and load carrying exercise. Good on him for doing that, especially a friend of mine was 47 years old.
All right,
and was
as a Masters
diagnosed.
athlete, it's imperative.
Yep, he was diagnosed with osteoporosis at 47.
No big surprise.
So, yep. He says, I want to target both Masters, Nats, and state champs, as they are typically 2 to 3 weeks apart. So I figured this was a question. We get a lot of questions about, like, which training plan should I pick? And you'll find that on the Facebook podcast group, it's a great spot to go where you can, a lot of people ask that sort of question, and then people chime in with different things they've done. But I figured this is a good opportunity to cover kind of that.
So BBS cycle?
Yeah, the base build specialty cycle, and then also the last part that he covered about stretching that peak out a little bit if it's possible.
Let's talk about that.
So where should we start?
Well, first off, Alan, your first obstacle in planning is the fact that we don't know what the date is. So you can submit, or the location,
minor detail.
because we're coming up on, we've done 2 years in, is it Augusta? Is that where we're at right now?
No, they've been,
for Masters?
I believe that they've been in Carolina, somewhere around
Well, no,
Virginia.
that was Winston a couple years ago. But anyway, regardless, they're coming up. They're going to shift. So right now, people have until August 1st to submit a bid to host Masters Nationals. The selection will be made on December 1st. So you're not going to know where and when until December 1st. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Not much I can do. Once you know that, then you can start to step backward. You can also make some assumptions if you want to risk it a bit, and maybe you won't have peak fitness, but you'll have good fitness. I mean, it's going to happen no earlier. Well, you don't know, but it's probably not going to happen any earlier than May. Probably no later than August. It's not a narrow.
Small time window.
Sorry. Anyway, and then you can start to structure your training. We've talked a number of times about the type of athlete you are. Your experience level is going to shape if you have extra time, what you do with it. If you have limited time, what you do with it. We can touch on that a bit as we come to it. But we're looking for just the same thing we recommend all the time, or very frequently, as our sweet spot base plan, and then move into a sustained power plan, and then into the 40K TT. Pretty straightforward. You're training for an event that we have a very specific plan for.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, if you happen to end up with more time, if you're a newcomer, we typically heap emphasis on the base phase. If you're a veteran, then we can shift that around a bit. Once the sprint intensity plans are in effect and in place, we can start to plunk that in really key places. And that can be the start of a plan. It can be in between phases of plans. There's a lot of opportunities.
How do I know the difference if I'm a newcomer or a veteran?
That's a tough one too, because you could be someone who's been in the game for 5 years, but maybe you only ride, so many weeks a year, so many hours a week, or as someone who's a relative newcomer has been in it for a couple of years, maybe they're hitting it really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something I'm actually doing more base this year. I mean, coming back from an injury, I'm actually doing traditional base low volume to start out, to really give myself time to kind of start things in. That won't do a whole lot to move the fitness needle for me.
No, but there's a differentiation or something that is important to keep in mind is, building fitness is one thing, building durability is another. And often they overlap, but that durability, when we talk about base conditioning, base fitness, goes a long way towards that building a higher fitness peak.
That's what I'm going for, is durability, really. And then as I work my way through that traditional base, then I'm going to be jumping into sweet spot base. I'm kind of doubling up on base. So, and an experienced rider, but I'm coming back from an injury, and I don't know the date of when I can race. So I figure I'm going to front load this thing at least with this.
Well, if it's a sufficient stimulus and it inspires more aerobic adaptation, and later you just heap more aerobic adaptation on top of that, I mean, you can't fault that route.
So, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong. You could be a veteran with many years of training, but let's say you took 6 months off or 3 months off.
That's another catch.
We would then have, say, yes, do the base period. But if you were a veteran who maybe you took a 2-week off of, in between seasons, but then your next race, you don't have time to go through all 26 weeks base build specialty, that's when we would jump you to.
And maybe you're already carrying a fairly high level of fitness, so revisiting base won't be all that productive. It won't be a sufficient stimulus. I mean, it's not going to push any further adaptation. So, you can take a look at these plans and say, I know I can do that, but I know it's not going to make me any faster. I'm going to dive into, considering my timetable, I'm going to dive into some harder stuff that's a little harder on my body, but will yield a quicker change.
But then if I was a newcomer or had time off, that's when we'd go into base.
Yes. Yeah, in so many cases.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, too, when you said that it's not a high enough training stimulus, that, again, is the very small percentage of people, because they come in with a new FTP and they do base, and it usually, the data shows, it pushes.
Yeah, like I said, you could do sweet spot base over and over again and just keep reassessing your FTP at the end of it, and probably still keep reaping gains from the same plan, the same workouts, just a higher work capacity each time.
It's that weightlifting idea, right?
Yeah.
I'm still doing 8 reps of bench press. How am I still getting stronger?
Yeah, exactly. And then Alan, you have the benefit of an event that, one comes pretty closely on the heels of the other, which means what happens at that first one can influence what you do at the second one. Assuming conditions are the same, courses are the same, there's going to have to be a few parallels for you to make decisions for the later one based on the earlier one. But you will have roughly the same fitness. So between them, if you carry a high level of fitness into the first one, and then 3 weeks later you have the second one, man, you could sit on the couch almost and still have almost the same fitness for that second round. I'm sure you won't. But the fact is, your fitness for one is probably going to be your fitness for another. You're not going to see any big changes for that second one. So try to figure out how to make that second one a higher level of a greater success by tweaking something, whether it's your pacing or your nutrition tweaks. Maybe you change something about your position or your equipment, well prior to that second go at it. Cooling strategies, your warm up, just a number of things. Learn from that first one, apply it to the second one, and benefit from it.
So, what kind of workouts in those 2 to 3 weeks between would he be doing?
That would depend on how much stress he carried into it. So that's another thing he can learn. How tired was I going into this first time trial? Did I overdo it? Did I blow my taper? Did I maybe taper too long and was kind of on the wrong end of things? Was losing more fitness than gaining more freshness sort of situation. But let's just assume it's a 2-week gap. I'd probably just focus on maybe a single practice TT per week and continue to refine my position. And I don't know that I would concern myself with a high level of structure, honestly.
I would probably do an hour-long Vo2 Max workout and then some kind of TT 1 and then maybe a sweet spot 1, 3.
I mean, if you want
to keep it light and fresh,
if you want to adhere to that, the same level of structure, and I can totally understand why some people will go that route. I think if I were in that position and I had a 2 or 3 week gap, I'd play it fast and loose. I would do things, local races, go out and maybe actually if you have access to the TT course, absolutely ride that, or ride something similar, but keep those 3 weeks or those 2-3 weeks very specific and maintain the intensity just like you would with any taper, but don't overwhelm yourself with the workload.
Yeah, I've found that I really do well in stretching out a peak for a week or two. I find I do really well in just usually when I've gotten to that peak, I've built up specific fitness for that sort of event. I've tailored things. And I usually end up going into that situation where I do workouts that are very similar to what I would be doing on race day.
Yeah,
but man, I chop that volume down. And I found that that's a huge thing for me. We'll get more into, I guess, peaking and periodization in the next.
A bit,
so
yeah.
I don't know if you want to jump into that one or if you have something else to share, Nate.
I have one more question for you. So basically, we talked about a few different ways to skin it between those 2 to 3 weeks, but the wrong way would be to say, he goes, my FTP is not high enough.
That's
If
not
I just
happen.
do like 2 weeks of 800,
Yeah.
like training stress and just do or like 15 hours, you just don't want to do too much, right?
It's probably, I can't imagine the rider that would work for. The rider who's going to, inside of a 2-week window, see a big fitness bump.
Yeah.
If anything, you'd see a fitness bump because you recovered and came into it a little fresher. Maybe some fitness slips away, but the recovery and all the things that equalize over the course of that recovery
It's a net gain.
going to see a better, or what will prompt a better performance.
Yeah, you're really looking for performance gain is like the thing that you should be focused on.
Yeah, some
right?
sort of improvement in performance could come in a number of ways.
Michael has a question very much on this vein from peaking and periodization, so we'll get deeper into that. He basically asks, he says it's a 2-part philosophical question around managing a season and peaking. Number 1, is there a limit to the amount of fitness you can build with a certain amount of base conditioning? And he gives an example. If I hit this during my first season, and he says, for my first season's peak, will I not be able to get any faster without revisiting base? And then he also asks, does this change as you get more years under your belt? So I guess that what he's really asking is, like, if I put in X amount of time doing base training, does that mean that I can only reach a specific peak? In my mind, I'm kind of thinking of the pyramid analogy that a lot of people think about when you're building, your base, and you build a broad enough base, and the width of that base determines how high that pyramid can be. Is like I think that's kind of what he's getting at here.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the question everybody asks. Nate came up against this just recently, where his fitness rose to a certain level, and he thought, well, this may not be as high as I can push it. Can I push it even higher?
Nope.
And what he came up against was his durability had only reached a certain height. And I know I'm throwing that word around a lot lately. We haven't talked about it, but it's an important aspect of training. How durable is your body? What can it respond to? Not only how quickly does it adapt, but at what point does that adaptation start to stall and then go backwards? And what happens when, in Nate's case and in a lot of our cases, we try to push past that and performance suffers for an extended period. So it's very much a trial and error sort of thing. And the more data you accumulate and the more experience you gain, the more informed you'll be. But at some point, you have to make the mistake that Nate just made. So Nate knows, how quickly he can progress it, and then there's always those other things that factor into it, all the other stressors that are taking place during this period. How well are you recovering? How well are you sleeping? How well are you nourishing your body, et cetera?
Yeah, there's so many variables to deal with when you're talking about bringing yourself to peak fitness. Like, there are so many things that you have to control or at least deal with that you can't control, but at least you're subject to them. And I find that that's something that when you're talking about getting to your physiological peak, I often question if there's ever a possibility to really reach one unfettered, right? Like, you always go through a situation where something is going to affect it. But I've certainly, like, at least in my personal experience, and I know obviously this is very much a plug for what we have, but following the pattern and cycling of that base, build, and specialty cycle, then resetting, has allowed incremental gains time over time rather than just trying to continue to build.
Doing it year after year is what fosters that durability. I mean, the more you train, the more you can train, assuming you don't overdo it. You build a body that's capable of handling more training, which means it's capable of ascending to greater heights, greater performance heights.
That's why you hear athletes talk about the fact that, like, some people call it old man strength that they see in, like, some of, like, the pros that have been around a long time.
That's exactly what that is, yeah.
And what we're really talking about is, it's sure savvy's in there, but it's years and years of building that up. Even, athletes like, top performing athletes like Keegan Swenson, he's getting ready to, his goal is Tokyo in 2020 for the Olympics, right? That's what he's going for. And he has acknowledged the fact that he's going to be a very different athlete by Tokyo, and that's the plan, but he can't be there now. He's he's been taking his steps, and year after year,
on a
knowing he's
multi-year
getting
trajectory, and he's reining it in over the course of years rather than weeks or months like most of us do.
Yeah.
But basically, Michael, what you're trying to get a handle on is your adaptation and recovery profile. And what's Mojica? Inigo Mojica, I think. Either way, he's heavy into peaking and just training science, period. And he put it as some athletes recover faster than others. Some have long-lasting training adaptations, whereas others detrain quickly. So this is highly subjective. These are things that, like Nate's talking with Jonathan. Jonathan responds really quickly to training and recovers quickly too. Both of us, not in that boat. We have to monitor it far more closely. So we have to recognize earlier those signs because they're less forgiving in our cases. Jonathan can bounce back a bit quicker.
To give you an example, taking a year off of training puts me at like 2 watts per kilo, like off the couch.
Yeah.
So then and I'm at 4 right now.
Yeah,
so
it's a precipitous decline. You go from a high level of performance, 4 watts a kg, which is very respectable.
Thanks, Chad.
To half of that. That's disappointing. I mean, that's a real bummer.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that now you would only drop maybe to 2.5.
I don't want to try.
I don't, right? I don't recommend it.
Is that like what's actually going on? And I don't know if, and I guess this kind of gets into, I'm going to jump into the second part of his question, if that's okay. He says, the second part is what to expect after a peak. I find this is almost never discussed, but should you expect a decline in FTP as you're coming down, or a decrease in endurance as you've been doing less volume, or perhaps less repeatability? And I feel like that's, I guess, talking about what will be happening when Nate drops from 4 to 2 or insert whatever numbers work for each person. I guess what actually is going on? What do you lose? Should you expect repeatability to maintain, but you just lose FTP?
Yeah, at some point this made sense in my head how to tie this into tapering because there is some overlap in well, obviously you taper for a peak, but how well you taper and how this all carries. I'm trying to, either way, we're just going to talk about tapering for a moment here. And is that what you were asking?
Yeah, no, what we're really getting to is like what happens, I guess the body's kind of taking a natural taper thereafter, right? Like you get to peak fitness and you drop down for one reason or another. Hopefully it's not because, you got sick or something else happened and you've dropped it down. Hopefully it's because you just raced and now it's a natural decline. But I guess that what we're really getting at is what happens when your body is dropping down or when you've dropped back from a peak? What actually goes on?
Yeah, so ideally you're recovering from all the stress you've inflicted over an extended period of time. And people, I don't think, recognize that when they heap stress on the body and they do it week after week after week, that, well, at some point they will realize we can't keep that up. All sorts of things just can take so much until they can't take any more. It affects on our muscle fibers, on our blood parameters, on just the level of testosterone, which we talked in depth about last week, and all the ways the body can't bounce back anymore. We have to give it a period of detraining so that it can bounce back. We can't just keep on heaping stress on stress on stress. And if we don't take that seriously enough and we don't step far enough away, it's kind of what we're doing. We get to a point where we're almost recovered and then we're starting the whole cycle again, which puts us in a pretty unfavorable position when we're not going to rise to that better level of performance that we think we should have based on what happened last year.
So you kind of, it's a good thing to accept that decline that you might have thereafter.
It's natural. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It's simply part of the cycle.
I see a lot of athletes like really fight against that, and they're really scared to lose what they had. But if you look at it in a larger scale, you dose your body with work, then you let your body recover, or really, I guess us athletes should actually think of it more like you have to dose your body with recovery because we're not very good at letting that happen.
And at some point, it has to be a long-term form of recovery. It can't just be the recovery week that you throw in or the recovery day that should be part of every week. It has to be something more substantial.
That dosage and balance between the two operates at different scales. We're talking interval to interval, and we're talking very big scale. We're talking months of development to allowing yourself a few weeks, a couple weeks, whatever it is, to drop back down and recover. It's hard to accept, but it's good.
If you don't do that, Chad, so let's say I try to hold on to the peak. Will my FTP just naturally go down?
Yeah, eventually everything's going to start to slide.
Yeah.
And I hate use the example every time, but we saw it front and center. You did that very thing. You just pushed past the point where your body could continue to adapt, yet you kept pushing the high training loads, and your FTP just slipped.
I do this so everyone can learn.
It's for their benefit. No, you're an excellent test monkey.
Will I be more tired if I try to hang on to that peak?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the things we talked about, all the systems that become depressed, they will only allow you to operate at a certain level. I mean, whether it's conscious decision driven by the brain or if it's just muscles that can't function at that same level because they've been beaten down so severely and routinely isn't really the point. The fact is your body can take what it takes until it can't take anymore.
Quick question on this. Have you, for you guys personally, have you ever reached peak fitness like that and then gone through this period of recovery without getting sick? I have not. Every time I always get sick.
No, I don't necessarily get sick every time, but I do recognize I'm in a fragile state. So, I mean, it just happened just after the 40K TT challenge we did. I trained as heavily as I have in quite some time, and then I've just lost interest. And I think part of that is like a subconscious. My body's telling me you couldn't do it anyway, so why try? Yeah. And then another part of it is just me lacking motivation, which could all be the same thing.
That's my next question is if you try to hold on to a peak, do you lose motivation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can only drive yourself for so long. Even the best athletes, I mean, Olympic-bound athletes are on a cycle that factors all this into it. They're not just going to start at day one and continue pushing all the way up till 4 years in when they show up at the Olympics. They have these same cycles.
The other thing that happens is you can't finish the same workout, right, at the same FTP.
Yeah.
These
are
are just
signs.
These are all signs. I wrote these down, and these are all signs that I've experienced.
We're data-driven athletes, right? So like we live and die by that, and we'll see the data, and we'll see that data declining, and it's really hard for us to take that in. But the fact is that should tell you something. Yeah. The data doesn't just have to discourage you; it can inform you.
And I feel like I'm pretty data-driven, but the first thing I can't finish the workout that I could do before, and I go, my power meter is miscalibrated. It's not me. And then Chad's here like, you're doing too much, dude. I can just tell you look exhausted. People on the podcast would type in like, Nate, you look horrible.
So tired.
Sleep some more. Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's just my power meter, guys. I can do this.
Yeah. And then we I think often confuse at the end of a long training block, we try to snow ourselves into believing that maybe we just need a week off or a couple days off, or we just need to tone down a couple workouts. But we find ways to cheat our recovery that so do not benefit us.
I do it as I go, okay, I've got a week-long work trip. There's my recovery.
Yeah.
And then I come back, and it was stressful the whole time, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to hit it again.
Yeah, and you're not.
I'm not.
No, it hardly ever works that way. I get one thing that's tricky for a lot of athletes, especially as you're getting further away from your starting point and your training phase, the phases that you've lined up, is how to tell the difference. Like a lot of people wonder if they peak too soon, and it can happen very early. Is there a way that you guys have used to be able to differentiate between like a step and improvement where you feel like I've made a step versus kind of that peak?
Experience, again, trial and error, and more times error than success or emphasis on the error part of that.
So what you're getting at is, it would be a shame if, I thought I was at a peak, but really it's just a step in my fitness.
Yes.
And I'm going to go higher.
Continue to push further.
So personally, I'd rather push it and find my limits than be in this, unless it's I want to push it by my limits.
I think that's
learn more, like as Chad said, experience.
Yeah, and those limits may not actually be limits. They're limits, particular to the situation. So maybe Nate got to a point where he was, 600 stress score each week, and he said, "This is where I start to break down." But what else was going on? Maybe next year he can actually do a 700 stress score each week, continue to respond or adapt positively to it if he can fix something else about what was going on at that time.
I think it's mostly too the learning of how I felt. Because getting the numbers isn't as much as I'm like, okay, the motivation is down. You've ramped more than recent.
Yeah.
And I also got in this situation where at peak, we talked about it. You really, really want to race because you have this fitness. And then I did a whole bunch, and then I got sick. And I just kind of ignored that, and I got sick again.
That's a excellent point, because all we talk about is data, and all this, all these objective metrics, and pay attention to the numbers. And when the numbers tell you can, you can. But above all, you have to pay attention to how you're feeling. So Nate can say 600 training stress score this week, or training stress buried me. But he could be in that same situation and be feeling fine, and no, I can definitely do more.
Yeah. It's I think that's one of the benefits of following a plan that's intelligently and soundly designed, and then if it's adjusted to you, and you have confidence in that. That's what there have been times where I've actually seen a pretty big boost in the sweet spot base phase, and I'm like, man, I'm doing really well. And there's this thought that creeps into my mind, like, am I peaking too early? Am I peaking too early? But then I have confidence in the plan, and I stick to it, and I always end up, going better. I think that the plans that we have, at least in our situation, they've all worked well for me.
Yeah, and then there's no hard, fast answer. I mean, you could be working directly with a very high level coach, and you and your coach are still going to have to figure these same things out. It's not scripted, and it's not consistent across riders.
The other thing to think about is just going back of like more of the average person. If you're doing 1 to 2 workouts a week, and then some weeks you take off, and you're there's this person who's kind of they do maybe do a couple rides before it. Like, you're not probably, depending on your nutrition and your stress and your genetics, experiencing what we're just talking about.
Probably not. You might be seeing an improvement, but you're not seeing peak.
Exactly. So you probably might be seeing stepped, and you're like, oh, I raised 20, now I'm peaked, or 20 watts, and now I've peaked, and I need to take time off on my 2 workouts a week. So that is just be careful. I think the people who have experienced that, and they're doing the volume that's a lot for them.
Yeah,
it's all relative too. It's which makes this all hard. We can't say, I wish I could be like, if you do 9 hours a week, that is a bit peak, but some people can do 15 and it's not enough, and some people with 4 structured with their lifestyle and genetics and nutrition and recovery, that is going to be a lot.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
my point. Let's move on.
That's a good
It's
one.
solid. Let's do it. Let's get into Christopher's question. Let's change off of peaking. He says there's been a lot of articles in the fact that sitting all day long is detrimental to your health, and that exercise may not fully counteract it. In addition, we often hear that sitting shortens your hip flexors and is not good for athletes. I use a standing desk at work where I'll stand for 9 to 10 hours a day. That's a lot of standing. What sort of effect will this have on my training? Should I sit the day after a hard workout? Thanks, an awesome podcast.
Yeah, so this is one of those situations that reminds me of an episode of Portlandia. It's the first
ever.
episode of season 4, and they're the Fred Armisen and Carrie Brown are the people who have died in the house and are haunting the house, and they died of confusion because they would see one study that would tell them, sitting is what kills, the other study that tells them standing is bad, and they're out there, and this is a perfect demonstration of that. So we found arguments on both sides.
Of course, right?
But yeah, I mean, does it burn more calories? Yeah, slightly more, but we're talking a half day standing plus a half day sitting, 45 calories for an 80 kilogram person.
Yeah.
Whereas if you stood all day, 70. So we're talking 35 more calories. I mean, that's
or half day of standing.
Yeah, exactly, for a pretty big time commitment.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just walk around for a couple minutes, 2 times, 140 calories.
Yeah.
So if you're really chasing calories, just get up and move a bit. Don't worry about whether you're standing or sitting all day.
That doesn't seem right. 4 minutes, 140 calories.
Seems like a lot.
That's good. No, because you do a Trainerroad workout, and I can't get
That's what I mean.
4. Yeah, that's
It seems like too much.
Stuart Phillips, and I'm not even sure who Stuart
Stuart's
Phillips is,
wrong.
but that's my source.
Come on, Stuart.
And there are studies that support that people who stand more live longer. But again, it's a really a case of sedentarism.
Yeah.
Where if you're lazy and you sit around all the time, your lifespan will suffer for it.
There are plenty of other unhealthy habits, I'm sure, that are affecting that, if you're just sedentary.
But I think what we're after here is, how does it impact your training and how does it impact your endurance capacity? So basically, if you're tired, you kind of got to rest your body. And standing, though restful to someone who's adapted to it, I mean, if you can stand 9 or 10 hours a day, you've adapted to it. You can do it quite well. But it may not be the best form of recovery for you. It may be preventing a higher level of recovery. Yeah.
I remember reading the study about people living longer, or at least reading the report about the study, living longer if you stand up. And they said, even if you take people who work out, you would still, that didn't increase your how long you live for.
Yeah.
But so I don't know how they define people who work out, but the standard population does not train like cyclists and
like
triathletes
all of us
do.
listening to this podcast.
Exactly.
We're in a narrow demographic.
They're like 2 times a week, 30 minutes, and they get on the elliptical and they
count
do
their
that,
steps
and they talk to their friend, and
And
they're like,
intensity is low, and it's basically just mindless.
They're
It's
not
better
worrying
than
about
nothing.
movement.
They're not
It's
talking about
something.
peaking and all this kind of stuff. So I would like to see if they would take people who maybe had trained 8 hours of cycling or triathlon for many years, and then they're kind of resting when they're not doing that. If that, then pull that cohort out of the study.
That'd be useful to us, yeah, for sure. And then not to just run this buzzword into the ground, but run durability. I've seen some coaches who advocate standing desk because it furthers run durability. And we're talking for ultra endurance athletes who have to, contract the muscles at a low force contraction rate for hours and hours on end. Standing for hours and hours on end can further their run durability.
all of us have standing desks here, all three of us.
Yep.
We do.
Nate, you don't use yours hardly at all, right?
No, I used to.
Yeah.
But not anymore.
You use yours pretty regularly?
Yeah, I like to change back and forth. I think you're the same way. I just like an hour up and then a couple hours down, hour up. And there's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's just a varied seat. I can't sit at a desk for hours on end.
But to my defense, I don't. As an engineer, I used to do that, but I never sit at my desk all day anymore.
No,
You're
I'm
constantly
moving all around.
from
Yeah,
spot
around
to spot.
this time.
It's not like you're just plopped in the same spot. I've found that it really does. I find that mixing it up really helps. I don't find that standing nonstop is beneficial. And they even say, like, like when you're at your standing desk, hopefully you're also in a position where you're a little bit more like comfortable, like you're not locked into like bad posture.
Locked your knees out. I mean, it has to be an active posture. You have to be trying to maintain a proper posture. I mean, you can't just stand up and then hunch over your desk in the same way, almost the same way you would be as if you were seated.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, I won't say rules, but recommendations that I feel should be pretty obvious.
Totally. Like that's I keep my standing desk, and even I keep my standing desk higher than what most people I see do with their desks, because I don't want to be leaning on my desk. I want to have my desk put me in a posture where I'm holding myself upright, but not having to strain downward or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a hard posture. That's like my girlfriend's a veterinarian, so on surgery days, and surgeons would be an even better example. They have to maintain that slightly canted position where they're flexed at the hips for long periods of time. That's just got to be a miserable way to spend literally hours on end.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say with the standing desk, so I would say run it perhaps higher than you think. Change it up is another tip. Don't just stand. If you have the luxury of being able to change it from standing to sitting. But then when it comes to post-workout days, like if I do a workout and then after that, I don't do much standing at all. Usually I'm doing some sitting down, and even if I can, I'm finding a spot like in another spot in the office where I don't just sit in the same 90-90 position of my legs and hips.
Well, and you can see how things go too. I mean, if it impedes recovery and your next workout you feel a little flat, maybe don't stand as much.
That's my point, is we don't have like data on athletes on this, but in general use common sense. If you're super tired, we have seats where you can put your feet up and kind of lay down, rather than I'm super tired from this workout, but I need to stand up today or I won't live
Need
longer.
those extra 35 calories.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly. So use common sense.
Yeah.
Let's look at Martin's question. He says, if you're training for hill climb competitions like the ones in Britain, so this means 2 to 6 minute efforts usually, do you do intervals all out and recover fully, or is it repeatability, or is repeatability just as important? And he also asked, and he said, should I be doing workouts that focus on that repeatability? So before we go into this, I guess, can we just discuss repeatability and what type of workouts
Yeah,
you'll be doing?
so we're looking at what are you chasing here? I mean, are you looking to build a big anaerobic motor? Are you looking to build a big aerobic motor? That's kind of the first distinction. And early on in a training plan where we see a lot of the shorter ones that are stacked closely together, well, it depends on the training plan too. All we're after is aerobic adaptation. We don't really we don't chase anaerobic adaptation until late in the plan when it's very specific to the events. So you'll see, and it's not consistent, but more often than not, you'll see the workouts that target aerobic adaptation. And we can go about that in so many different ways. And we've talked about just the traditional duration Vo2 Max intervals of 2 to 3 minutes. We've broken them down to real short ones. We've done minute on, minute off. But basically those recovery, so whether you're doing all out with full recovery or the repeatability, it's really what's taking place during the recovery. So the recovery intervals start to make a massive difference on which energy system you're training. So you do these high intensity efforts and then recover fully, and the replenishment is of a different nature than if you do short ones where you're basically just starving your body of oxygen and increasing the oxygen demand without increasing the oxygen supply, and the stimulus that provides and what happens at the cell level, and basically the aerobic adaptations that follow. So steer me, where do we go from here?
So I think that the one thing that I feel like with these TTs, you might question it. So, I mean, the TTs themselves, they aren't going to be a perfect, consistent grade all the way up. They will have undulations.
But for a 2 or 6 minute effort, the effort's going to be pretty consistent regardless of the changes in the topography.
That's something that I find that maybe is misunderstood by a lot of folks. They think that just, topography doesn't absolutely define the interval structure that you need to follow. And especially when you're talking about an effort that's going to be 2 to 6 minutes, you should be consistently hard throughout that, regardless of what the road's doing to you.
Sure.
And time trial.
And in the case of both 2 and 6 minute, I mean, these are largely aerobically driven. I mean, with a 2 minute effort, you're going to get a whole lot of anaerobic contribution before you peter out. A 6 minute effort, it's going to be a whole lot of aerobic. That anaerobic is going to go much earlier in the effort. So there is a pretty sharp distinction between training for a 2 minute hill climb and a 6 minute hill climb. So be clear on that.
Yeah.
If your efforts are, and this is where the specificity starts to figure into it. So you can build that aerobic motor in 10 different ways leading up to the event, but as you get close to that event, if you know it's 2 minutes, you practice 2 minute repeats. If you know it's 6 minutes, you practice 6 minute repeats.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting that you can do like these Vo2 Max intervals where you have, 3 minute efforts and you have 3 minutes rest in between, something like that. Or you can do something that's, 20 seconds on, then 20 seconds at your threshold, then 20 seconds on, 20, and you're going to be getting not, perhaps the same benefits across the board, but similar benefits.
Yeah, well, to an extent. I mean, if you make those recoveries quite long, 3-4 minutes, even then there's going to be a stress on the aerobic system, but you can shape these. I mean, if you want to get really good at 2 minute repeats, I would say hit the 2 minute repeats hard, recover for 5, 8, 10 minutes, and then hit them hard again. Get really good at dragging out as much power as you can over a 2 minute duration. But if you know it's going to be 6 minutes or 8 minutes or 10, and it's going to be largely aerobically driven, again, go back to the many ways that pick the ones you like best that promote aerobic adaptation, because it's going to be an aerobic effort.
So that's more. So the longer it is on that, the more repeatability.
The more the not necessarily repeatability as an aerobic bent. On your training.
A workout that. So the workout that has repeated intervals with less time fosters, or less recovery between, fosters more a better aerobic engine, which you're going to need in the 3, 4, 5, 6 minute hill climbs.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's really interesting about that is we're talking about an aerobic stimulus, let's put it like that, on fibers across the board. So if you're just burying yourself in oxygen debt, but not replenishing it and providing this big stimulus that says I need more oxygen replenishment, that it affects not just those slow twitch fibers. You're getting the faster twitch fibers too. Even the 2x sprinting fibers, the really fast fibers, start to gain certain aerobic adaptations. They can actually shift towards those more versatile fibers because the stresses you're imposing, the stimuli you're imposing on your body are of an aerobic nature. And those aerobic adaptations happen across the board to varying degrees.
Pretty fascinating stuff.
So for, let's say Martin, he's got a mix. I'm guessing, Chad, could he do maybe the two most important workouts of the week? One would be that kind of all out with like the all out 2 minutes with longer full recoveries. And the next one, most important, would be the more repeatable building the aerobic engine.
Yeah, I think I would just focus on building the aerobic engine, because even a 2 minute effort is going to be so much about the aerobic engine that I think I would just maybe, if one of those were coming up, practice some 2 minute efforts so I got a handle on just how hard I can work for a couple minutes at a time. But I don't know that I would just focus on doing 2 minute efforts. I mean, there's still time trials. Aerobic adaptation is still what you're after. I mean, we're not looking at making a guy who just sprints 2 minutes every once in a while. I mean, I think more often than not, he's probably going to face things that are longer than a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So I would, again, it goes back to specificity. If he knows what the event's going to be,
Sprinkle
practice
them in.
that. Yeah. But still recognize the fact that even short efforts are very aerobic, and the bigger your aerobic engine, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. On everything. Right.
Everything endurance. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, totally. We're going to jump down actually to a different question. We always follow a doc here, so I'm just letting the guys know. We're going to jump down to a question about these very same races that go on. And this is going to be Carl's question for us. These British hill climb TTs, I wish we had them around here. They'd be super fun. I know Red Bull is doing actually something similar to this over in the Bay Area soon, and it's like a single climb, and it's just extremely steep. And then a bunch of athletes show up for that one. That'll be cool. But I wish we had more of these. It'd be fun. Here's some interesting stuff to think about. He says he follows the podcast avidly, and he's routinely impressed by the deep insights held, and particularly by Coach Chad. Bravo, Chad. Yeah. Golf claps.
Thanks, Carl.
He says, I have a question on nutrition, which I have not seen answered anywhere here before. Short-term weight loss from mostly fluid loss can have a great impact on your power-to-weight ratio for cyclists, given that you can maintain your power. This is a topic normally shunned as general advice for amateurs, as no one wants to advise underfueling and dehydration. However, for short events such as these British hill climb TTs or any event under 15 minutes, he says, could it be worth experimenting with a reduced intake of food and fluids 24 hours leading up to a short race? He says not totally fasted, just reducing it, and then supplementing with 2 gels 30 minutes before the event. I guesstimate I could lose perhaps even 4 kilograms from lower glycogen levels, and he says including water, and slightly reduced fluid levels. This has been explored by Team Sky for full mountain stages. Thanks, and hope you can explore my question with an open mind, not just the safest best practice. So I guess using these hill climb TTs as an example, Nate, I was trying to figure this out. We talked about this beforehand. I was trying to figure it out, like, keeping time constant, but changing some other things. But it's kind of tricky with what I was using. But I basically ran some numbers on this, and I really assumed a very small change. Like, this is just 2 pounds, so it's like 1.5 kilograms roughly is like what you're losing.
We could extrapolate, though.
Totally. Yeah. So I did it for different weights because it changes depending on how much you weigh. That reduction isn't the same in terms of what it gains you. But assuming that this is a 1 kilometer climb, and it's 10% is the grade, and you're riding at 275 watts is the wattage that I use. I just kind of kept a consistent one across the board. If you're 220 pounds or 54 kilograms versus 218 pounds or 53.5 kilograms, you get almost a 3.5 second advantage by losing those 2 pounds.
So if there was the 8 kilograms, which is a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's 27 seconds.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, and then the changes though, I mean, not much, but you're looking closer to 3 seconds if you're around 170 pounds or 77 kilograms with the same, 1 kilogram, or I should say like the 2 pound loss. And then if you weigh 120 pounds, this is where you'd see certain female athletes, something like that, or smaller male athletes, climbers, that sort of thing. You'd see less of an advantage, about 1.5 seconds. So the more you weigh, you would see more of a difference between this weight loss that you have, assuming everything is the same. It is kind of an interesting concept, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, when you cast safest best practice aside, I think it sounds like a viable strategy. I mean, it's a one-time affair. It ditches a ton of weight on something where weight is a huge factor.
Well, I like the idea of experimenting.
Yeah.
And then also it's such a short effort that you don't need to have so you don't want to, it's again perfectly balanced, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to be so dehydrated that you lose so much power or have so little glycogen that you lose so much power. But so if you gain 20 seconds, maybe you want to lose 5 based on hydration. You gain 15 seconds. Yeah.
Something I want to add to this is that I feel that a lot of people view fueling with food and hydration. They view it as the point behind this is to avoid failure, as in like avoid and total dehydration where you have to cut it out, or bonking, right?
Yeah.
Where you're completely out of, glycogen or not able to take up and use that glycogen, right? So that's kind of like what I usually think most people, they think that that's the point. But we've seen from different studies, and we've seen in our own usage as well, that being more hydrated and having more fuel on board or better fuel, it improves performance second by second. It's not just helping you avoid a potential failure.
I don't know about hydration, but glycogen, yes.
Yeah.
Hydration specifically. I mean, some of the best marathon times have come from the most dehydrated runners across the line.
See, that I think is also, I've heard that so many times, and I think that's the perfectly balanced one. It's the people who cross the line who haven't gone so dehydrated that they end up walking and just at the aid station drinking water.
They got it just right.
Exactly. So the people, just like you want me to do in my race, the people who got the balance exactly right are lighter and are faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that obviously on the safest best practice side of things, usually people fail on the other end of this, right? Like usually people are failing with not fueling enough, not hydrating enough. I don't think that people have to worry about overhydrating very often or overfueling very often on the bike, at least what we've seen. But this is definitely, with these short races, I could even see something like this if it's a really short track race. You can see this with track events, but then again, you're not really climbing at that point. I guess you do have an acceleration with a track event, so that's something. But when you climb, this is where this weight really does make a difference.
I would lower salt intake too, because I wouldn't want to hold as much water.
Sure.
Especially.
I mean, if we're in the experimental phase of this, I would try just about anything.
Yeah.
I would. If we had them here, I would totally try to see if I could drop down to 8 pounds.
We could obsess so much over that, right? Can you imagine our bikes?
Think how unhealthy we'd be.
Oh, and our bikes
both
too.
mentally and physically.
Yeah, I'd just be not running rims. I would just get tires and make them stiff.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's just a one-time thing and you're just
Anyway,
affecting things the night before, going out and banging out a short effort.
2 days.
Why
Totally.
not? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Do what you can for that. So we're just going to finish things off with one more question. This one, it comes from Lance. So we'll be going back up in the doc, guys. Sorry about that. He says, my question regarding pre- and post-ride nutrition relates to incorporating healthier real food options for the carbohydrate and protein sources necessary. Now, usually you see like that 4-to-1 ratio. Some people say 2-to-1, whatever else. But that ratio that you take in of carbohydrate to protein after a workout to trying to find the optimal, basically
mitigate
intake.
Protein degradation, maybe slow carbohydrate absorption or better.
Mm-hmm. And currently, like most of us, I'm using drinks and powders that consist of a simple fast-absorbing carbohydrate and protein, which is desired. But I don't like consuming so many powdered components. What have you guys had good luck with that is more, and he says in quotes, food-like, but still provides the fast digesting response that is desirable for proper stimulation and adaptive response? My concern comes from the high concentration of unnatural sugars in the powdered drinks and how they can negatively affect digestion and gut health over time. Thanks for the great suggestions. So I guess real food versus just taking in powders, huh?
What's a real food recovery drink?
Yeah.
That's what I think he's asking.
Yeah, sure. Which the closest I can come, and this is anecdotal, well, it's just what I use, that's what he's asking, is that peanut butter powder. Which you'd think would be high fat, but they've managed to somehow pull the fat out and keep the protein, and it actually tastes really good, just mixed with low-fat milk and some BCAAs, because I don't know that the protein profile in that powder is what I wanted it to be.
It's called PB Fit.
Yep,
yeah, that's one brand, and it's delicious.
It's basically like pulverized dehydrated peanuts, and somehow in that process it does seem like they drop fat.
Somewhere they extracted
they skim the fat off. Yeah. But he's specifically asking for non-powdered products.
Oh well,
and you gave him a powdered option.
Well, so we say,
it's more of a real food.
Yeah.
It's more of a real food option rather than just like mystery powders.
I mean, real food. I mean, we talked before about the fact that if you're not doubling up on workouts and you don't need to quickly reload your glycogen stores for a workout that's coming just a few hours later, it really doesn't matter the time course over which you replenish your glycogen stores. It can be an all-day process.
Yeah, so what we're referring to is there was a study where people did recovery drink right afterwards, and that did load them up faster.
Quickly, yeah.
But then the other people who just ate regular meals, after 24 hours, they're in the same point.
Spot.
Yeah.
So for most of us who just do one workout a day, I personally feel skip the recovery drink, just eat a real food meal, and you're there.
Yeah. When it comes to 2-a-days, I have noticed a benefit, right? Like when I'm talking about
it's necessary
one workout to the next.
Unless you're trying to do a depleted ride with that second workout, and you're specifically chasing adaptations that occur when you're in a low glycogen state. Jam glycogen back into the system after that first workout, so you can have a productive second workout.
So this is triathletes. Right?
Totally.
This is really good for triathletes. I'm sure people are screaming saying chocolate milk on a live thing because that's a classic one.
If you can tolerate it, if you're not lactose intolerant, and it's kind of rich, even with low milk fat, it's still a kind of a rich drink.
Yeah, and it's got
some people.
In some cases, you have to be careful of the chocolate milk you're getting. You can get some stuff that is just
definitely
full of sugar.
Definitely look at the label and look for cocoa over high fructose corn syrup.
Yes,
that's powdered.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard, this non-powdered thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily. I guess you have powdered drinks, and I guess that I don't know if you're talking about really eliminating powder itself, but I've personally found that after a workout, just having I was doing 2-a-days, actually 2 years ago. It's been a long time since I've really done 2-a-days, but 2 years ago I was doing 2-a-days, and I would do my early morning workout before breakfast, and then I would have a spinach omelet with some bell peppers, and it's just like a normal, a nice, well-rounded breakfast. And I felt awesome after that. It was great food. I wasn't taking in any sort of a drink. So. Yeah, there are plenty of options, I guess.
I'm always an advocate of whole food over supplements and powders and the like.
Lance, how about some fruit?
Totally.
Right afterwards. And then if you want some protein, if you do meat, you could do like a lunch meat slice or something like that. Or you could do cheese or dairy that's going to have more fat in it. But again, fruit would work great.
Sure.
Yeah,
some nuts. Why not? So cool. That covers it for this week. The questions that we'll cover here on the podcast. If you're with us live, please stick with us and we'll answer some of the questions that you've submitted while you were watching this podcast with us on Facebook or YouTube. Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast. You can review, share. We appreciate all that. Let folks know that. I guess that's what we really appreciate most. And if you're curious about anything that we've talked about or what we do here at Trainerroad, just head to trainerroad.com. and submit those questions at trainerroad.com/podcast. We'll talk to you all next week. And hopefully, I should cover. It's going to be a unique episode next week because we will be in Leadville. So
on site.
Hopefully it's live. It's that's the plan, but you never know with internet in such a small town and everything else. But hopefully it's live, and we'll be planning to do that on Friday of next week, not Thursday. So if you want to join us live for that one, the plan is to do it Friday, and it would be at 8 a.m. Colorado time. So that would be 1 hour later than we usually, or 1 hour earlier than we usually record. So stay tuned for that. We'll give updates in the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group, but we'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'll take YouTube.
Okay. Jared asks, Nate, concerning acclimatization for Leadville, since the goal is to sleep high and train low, have you considered taking a VRBO up at incline with the family, commuting down the hill for a week, 2 before, and then do that? So pretty much
locally, he's saying, to our region. Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
I mean,
train down low and sleep up high.
Yes, but I'm too busy.
Yeah.
I'm not dedicated enough to spend the 2 hours to drive down to Sacramento, or an hour and a half, set up all the work out, and then come back up.
Trevor DeRouze, he used to work here, pro mountain biker. He lived in a van for a while, and he would just sleep every night. He would sleep in his van at 9,000 feet at the top of Mount Rose, and then come back down. That was his deal. So,
yeah. So
Yeah,
that would, yeah.
Dedication, just to sleep in a van, Nate. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, no, not that dedicated. Maybe one day for a really big goal, I'll do that, but not today.
It's a good idea, though.
Let's see. Oh, that's nice. Somebody says, I love everything about this podcast. Fantastic. So what is the best way to look back on a previous Leadville race and make improvements if all you have is heart rate and GPS data? I finished in 11 last year and want to shoot for 9 this year. The heart rate stuff can be tricky, especially because you're looking year to year, and who knows what variables went into that. If you kept every variable as consistent as possible, perhaps. But what I would say is the best way to look back at it is to look at your pacing between the segments, then think about look at your time between the segments if you can, then think as much as you can about how you pace during those things. If you chose to go more aggressively, less aggressively, that sort of thing. Because, if I didn't have, and even if I have my power meter, I'm still going to be very much weighting my effort based off of perception up at elevation too. So I say use perception and time splits.
Yeah, and I would base it on knowing that your fitness is improved, because going from an 11 to a 9 isn't just going to come from pacing or getting other little things right. It's going to be based largely on the fact that you're a fitter rider than you were last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything to add, Nate?
I missed the question. Was it about Leadville?
It was about Leadville.
Going
and
from
how
11 to a 9?
Yeah, but how they could analyze previous performances without power data. All they have is heart rate and GPS.
You can't.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
You don't know relative to your own fitness. You don't know really how far you went, especially when you go from different elevations and looking at heart rate.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to compare.
Yes.
And even with a power meter, you could tell how well you paced over the thing.
Yeah.
But you might not know how well your body reacts at elevation and how deep you went and that sort of thing.
It's tricky. There are a lot of variables. Tricky. Yeah, a lot of variables.
Kevin asks, when will Coach Chad post his pull-up video? Ha, ha, ha. But Chad, after that, you went and did something. You want to tell us what you did?
Oh, yeah. We finally started lifting again in the morning, and I did 15 chin-ups. No problem. The last couple were a problem. They were hard. I petered out at 15. And then 2 or 3 minutes later, based on Nate's sort of challenge, I did pull-ups and banged out 10 of them, and I wasn't quite replenished. I wasn't feeling ready to do it again, but I just wanted to see how hard pull-ups felt relative to chin-ups.
Yeah.
And I've got 10 of them out of the way. So I'm pretty sure, give me, few weeks, and I'll be able to do 20 of either.
Chad's going to reduce hydration, lower glycogen.
Ditch 8 kilos of water, yeah.
He cleverly said few, which really he's multiplying there. So he's really saying, he's saying 6 weeks. Yeah.
No.
So
I just need to be back in the gym for a little while.
Yeah. My question is, I do intermittent fasting throughout the week to stay away from sugar and starchy carbs. What is your guys' opinion on intermittent fasting and cycling? We've talked a lot about fasting before, fasted training, I should say, and you can look at that on our blog.trainerroad.com. Just search for fasted, but intermittent fasting, I think you've experimented with it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to fasting, and they're especially pronounced if you have any form of metabolic disorder. I think people juice their systems with carbohydrate and bump up their insulin levels unnecessarily frequently. If that's not you and you're simply looking at it as a form of weight loss, it can actually work really well. Consider if you don't have sugar in the system, your body is going to preferentially metabolize fat. I mean, you can't expect big bumps in fat metabolism if you're just sitting at a desk. So that's why typically when I did the intermittent fasting, I would couple it with a hard workout the night before, low carbohydrate dinner, and then the next day I'd get up and get on the bike for 30 or 40 minutes and work out in a pretty carb or glycogen depleted state. And reap greater benefits. It wasn't just restricting my eating to an 8-hour window, but there are benefits to that too, and they're pretty well supported. I think there's still the issues of timing your nutrients relative to your workouts, and some of the consequences that come with not replenishing afterwards, and especially in terms of protein degradation, muscle loss. But it has its place. Just be sensible about it. Don't train hard, do intermittent fasting because it's your preferred means of weight loss and then expect to be able to train hard again. I mean, it has to be done more sensibly than that.
In terms of like kind of avoiding those, like if you kind of have a metabolism that you constantly just overload with sugar and then it kind of goes in those crazy swings, it can kind of help that out.
Yeah.
But I assume
it improves insulin sensitivity, which is basically what you're describing there.
I assume that you wouldn't want to just finish off or close out your fast with a gigantic smoothie or something like that, like something crazy sugary.
There are some people who argue that it doesn't matter how many calories you jam into that window as long as you do it in that window. I mean, not exactly. It's your entire day's calories are what they are, whether you distribute them over 3 meals or simply one or two in that narrow time frame, such that you're only metabolizing a greater amount of fat over the remaining 16 hours of the day or 18, depending on how narrow your eating window is.
Yeah. Do you want to close it out with a bunch of sugar, though? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
I don't think refined sugar ever has a place. Yeah. I mean, the only time it does is like in the midst of a workout.
Leadville?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sugar train over there.
Sugar. 40 gels I'm bringing.
Yep. You got one?
Yep. It's for Chad. Where does optimal weight factor into peak fitness? How would you determine what that is for each individual?
Yeah.
There must be an optimal.
There is, and it's highly personal. Yeah. So you have to figure out. I mean, I've told the podcast a number of times that I found mine was right at about 171 pounds, because when I dipped down to 168, power started to go with it. I started to get sick. I didn't look good. I didn't feel good. So I found my optimum. It's not to say I couldn't get below it with different forms of weight loss, maybe ditch upper body muscle mass, maybe make it a multi-year sort of approach to gradually trim it down further. But I found a very hard line, and it helped me understand where I climbed best, maintained my power, and therefore performed best.
I find too that when you start to go to peak fitness, like body composition changes in a positive way, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I've found that that's actually something that I completely subscribe to. Like it's not a I don't worry quite as much about getting my body in perfect form before I start. I know that as I continue on that trajectory, everything's going to align.
Yeah, if you're training consistently, progressing at an appropriate rate and nourishing adequately, not overdoing it and obviously not underdoing it, it does kind of handle itself.
Yeah. Tim asks, is there a benefit to sizing down a bike frame for crit racing? So sizing down from, example, a 56 to a 54 or something like that. Yeah. I personally believe so.
Yeah, I mean, it's lower center of gravity. It's less weight to accelerate out of every turn.
You have greater leverage over the bike. Perhaps decreased stability, one could say, because you'll have a slightly shorter wheelbase. You'll also have, when I say greater leverage, I'm assuming that your position will be the same, just the frame will be smaller. So thusly, you'll have a longer stem, and your anchor point's further away from that center of mass. So you'll have greater leverage over the bike, but I personally always prefer, I'm in between a 56 and a 54. I guess I'm technically slightly on the 56 side. Usually when you look at bike measurements, I always go with the 54. I like a slightly smaller frame.
Same here.
Always like that. The only situation where I haven't done that is, you don't have that luxury, Nate. The only situation where I haven't done that is my enduro bike, which I want that one to be a bit more of I call it like a chunder bus, just like plow through everything. So in that case, that's a large, which would be an equivalent of like a 56, but it's a large instead of a medium like I usually ride with my mountain bikes. And I have a 35 millimeter stem instead of a 90 millimeter stem. And I have the 90 on my XC bike. So
yeah, I straddle that 58, 56 line and typically go with a 56 for all the same reasons.
Now the pros go for really small frames. You'll see them do that a lot. And that's honestly, a lot of it is just a tradition thing. You'll see that. So it's not necessarily like it's not fully data driven or anything else like that. It's just small bikes are cool. Right. And that's like, and it looks cool because you have a ton of seat posts and like a long stem, and pros think that looks cool. So, so be it.
Pros have long stems.
Yeah. Like 140s and stuff. Yeah. Super long. So, yeah, I mean, it's all up to you. I think that all three of us are looking at getting the S-Works Venge, the new one. And that one, I think it only comes with one stem length, like stock. You can get different ones thereafter, but it only comes with a 100. And then I think that you get a stem differently from there on. So kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind with that one.
Andrew asks, are we going to get back on topic? Would love to know how to go from 3.1 watts per kilo to 3.5. Train, Andrew. No, just kidding. So what I meant before on that is we have a great data set, and we're looking at the data to find out what the differences are for those people. It's not conclusive yet. So if we do find differences in those things, my goal is to, one, share with everybody, but then also build in the product so that we drive people to do those things based on where they're at. So I think I know the answer right now, which is from 3.1 to 3.5 is probably 3 structured workouts a week, maybe 4, and be consistent. That's pretty much it. And then proper nutrition and recovery. And maybe if you have a weight problem, losing some weight, but that's probably what it is. But I'd really like to see what exactly it is based on the data we have.
Yeah, we can't give you any very defined training prescription. Go do this workout, and this workout, and you'll go from 3.1 to 3.5. It's unfortunately not that simple.
But I want to say in general, 80% of the people who did it by doing this. And that's what I'm hoping that I'll see in the data, but it might not. But I'm pretty sure it will be something very
along
much
those
like
lines.
that. Yeah.
Wesley asks, I have a question regarding testing. Performing the 8-minute FTP test leads to a FTP of 400. However, during the 20-minute efforts, the best I can do is around 385. Is this mainly due to a lack of endurance? I assume that you are giving us numbers that are post-reduction that you normally do with 10% for the 8-minute testing,
or
5%.
Just got a massive engine.
This kind of points out one of the issues. I mean, a 20-minute effort, you have much more opportunity to make error with pacing in many cases. You just have 20 minutes, right? And pacing a 20-minute effort versus 2 different 8-minute efforts, I find to be much more difficult. The 20-minute one can be really tough. So it could be something else than that, but there's a lot of variables. This is one of the many reasons why we made the ramp test.
Yeah, because those steady state efforts can inflate or depress. I mean, they can give us, they're always a range. So we use a 5% reduction for a 20-minute effort, for instance, but some people fall closer to 92, some people fall closer to 98. So this is just one of the downsides of testing. It doesn't carry across all populations.
Yeah. Let's see. Another one here is, are there any plans to bring running and swimming information in the triathlon plans more to the foreground, or any improvements on that front?
Yep.
Definitely in the plans. We'd love to. Yeah,
what day is it? We just talked. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I don't want to share stuff so early because things always change. But a goal is to get the running, swimming stuff more forefront in the plans.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
I got one for you, Chad, from David. I'm going to paraphrase his question.
Okay.
He's doing mid-volume, 5 workouts a week. He wants to add 2 strength training days. His option, he says, is that means he would be training 7 days a week. So he's saying, should I be cutting a ride or what?
Yeah.
But I want to just
double up,
challenge that exactly of saying that he has to train 7 days a week. And what do you recommend?
Yeah, you don't have to train 7 days a week. You have to train 7 times a week. And it doesn't have to be on 7 different days. So you can do what I do, which is I lump my strength training routines into my interval days, typically a Tuesday, Thursday sort of thing, where I do the strength training in the morning and the intervals in the evening, or vice versa, depending on what my day tells me or makes me do. So just Double them up. Otherwise, you're training 7 days a week. You're not getting a recovery day in there. You're going to be doing a lot of your workouts tired, doubly tired in different ways. And I promise it won't have a positive impact on your performance.
Do you find that doing the weight training in the morning hurts your interval training at night?
Depending on what I'm doing, for sure. I have found that with the sprint intensity training, where you have to be able to go full gas for 30 seconds at a time, I can get away with strength training in the morning. Surprisingly, it hasn't had a big effect on it. But if I tried to do something like a sweet spot workout, haven't done a pretty hard weights workout in the morning, it's brutal. But that's a matter of prioritization. I'm more fond of lifting weights right now than I am riding bikes, or have been for a while. In your case, if you want to be a better cyclist, we've said this before too. Prioritize what's important.
Yes.
Do your cycling workouts, your high intensity training, especially when you're in the freshest state possible, and then lump that strength training on later in the day.
Yeah, and the safety component's extremely important too. I mean, if you exhaust yourself with a bike workout to the point where you get straight into the strength training thing and you don't have enough strength or energy, or you're too fatigued to hold proper form.
And ideally, you've separated that enough over the course of the day, and we're talking ideally 12, 14 hours apart. Like very opposite ends of the day. Get up to your first workout at 6 a.m., do your second one at 6 p.m., and that brings with it some of its own challenges. I won't lie, but try to push them as far apart from one another as possible, because they send conflicting cellular signals.
Gavin says, do you change your saddle height based on your bike shorts chamois thickness? So he says, try shorts with minimal padding versus traditional road bike shorts and bibs.
Say it again?
Do you change your saddle height based on the different chamois thickness of the chamois?
No, sorry.
I have, actually. Yeah, I've done this. Have you?
I haven't, but I kind of have, so on a TT bike or a tri bike, this is mostly for triathletes. Triathletes, you would do a very small chamois because you have to swim in it and it gets absorbed and you have to run in it.
Oh, running in a chamois.
That position isn't the same saddle height as my road bike anyways. So I wouldn't then adjust it.
No, so if we change shoes or pedals, then I adjust saddle height for sure.
But it's a good point. I mean, if you have a really thick one versus it's going to be millimeters different.
Yeah.
We had, when we first got Trainerroad kits way back in the day, we got some Jackaroo ones that were pretty early on with a really thin chamois versus the Quare ones that I was using, or that I used thereafter. The Quare one was really thick. It's not as thick now, but it was really thick. And I changed because of that. I did notice a difference. So... yeah, so not just cycling. How did that's? Sorry, you got something?
I was just say the bummer of it is that chamois is going to compress over time. So it's an ever changing thing. You're going to be chasing it the whole time.
Yeah.
Running in a chamois.
You don't feel it.
Really?
Yep, they're so thin you don't even feel it.
There's so many barriers.
People do.
To triathlon.
People do. You see it all the time. Triathletes will line up for running races. Yeah. And they'll be in their tri kit.
I see it.
Yep.
I just these athletes are just much better than me in every way.
It makes sense too, although it's not as cool, but running in your tri kit, especially if they have a new tri kit, they want to make sure they're not having chafing, that the chamois is fine,
sure. Yeah.
And it's a less consequential race. So
totally.
Plus you can kind of feel fast when you're all in super compressed stuff.
Yeah.
And you can carry a gel in your back tri jersey pocket. Yeah. Some of them have little zippers on the or little not zippers, tight pockets on the legs.
Yeah.
That make it so it's really tight so you can carry food. Where a normal runner, if you're in running clothes, like a baggy shirt and shorts or a tank top. Yeah, you don't. So and
to wear a hip belt.
I think there's another discussion to have that you should just use as a runner, just try to use the on-course nutrition because in running weight is huge and you don't want to be carrying your food an extra 3 miles or especially if it's something really long.
Do they make chamois more porous for triathlon? I wonder. It would be cool.
Porous?
Yeah, as in
just
shed water quicker.
I don't think they absorb water.
So they aren't because the cycling chamois, if you're in the rain, that thing is just a wet sponge.
Yeah, and I just did a workout inside, and I think it was on the weekend here. We didn't have the AC on, and it was 80 degrees, and the AC couldn't keep up with the heat, and it's 100 here. It just got so thick that actually I think it started to chafe because it was just full of water.
So, but you don't have that problem as much?
I'm trying to think. No, it's a different material. It's not the same. I haven't done it for a while. I can give you some. You can try it.
If you can't tell, I'm tri-curious. So I can't,
Kyle asks for my gels. Is it going to be Science and Sport plus caffeine or non-caffeine? And I am going to. This is part of the Swanee stuff.
You're winking heavily here.
It's all thought of. So I have chews. I have non-caffeine chews and caffeine chews. And I have non-Science and Sport caffeine and I have caffeine ones, and I have electrolyte science support ones. And I'm going to do is ask for a mix. And
got it.
I'm not going to take straight caffeine pills early in the race because those can make me feel really bad. Remember when I finished?
Totally.
They can improve performance, but after a while, you feel very, very bad.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a couple pre-race, which isn't that much caffeine. Or actually, I might do the science and sport caffeine.
Gels.
No, caffeine
the
bottle.
caffeine little bottle. Yeah.
I've done that before. I like that. And then after about 3/4 to the race, I'm going to save my little caffeine pills for that. And if I've had this, I did this at Israman, when your legs just really hurt and everything's going bad, you take those, you feel like magic. And you're going to feel awful at the end, but hopefully it's close enough to the end that I'm doing that. And the other caffeine during the day and the gels isn't really enough, and it's not that jolt of no-dose of 400 to 600 milligrams of caffeine at once.
Right, exactly. I was going to make Nate a cheat sheet for Leadville. I still will, but I think that we are going to need our own cheat sheet just to figure out Nate's nutrition strategy.
No, I built it.
It's all done.
Yeah, I don't think I need a cheat sheet for Leadville. It's all right here. All I'm going to do is have the pacing. There's like, if you get to certain points, if at this certain time, if you reach this landmark at this time,
chances are you're on course for
this. Yep.
Gotcha.
And then I can also use that though as my my cue sheet because I know like this climb, like the aid station before this climb comes up at this many minutes. So I just look at my thing and say I'm on pace for this, and it's going to be at 4.5 hours, and that's when the climb starts. And I kind of know how long the climbs are there.
Yeah, that works.
I've memorized them, so.
Scott,
race day, we'll forget.
Yeah, exactly. Scott asks, what factors would make an 80 millimeter deep section wheel faster than a disc wheel for a time trial or triathlon? The experts on this are Envy. You should talk to them, ask them. They will have insights for you because they very much know this problem. But I do know that there's a point of diminishing returns with where basically if you start to go slower with a disc wheel, then it does become less fast. At least that's what the data points to. So there is a certain point. I don't know if it's how it channels air over the bike and how that changes at different speed. You're talking about how the air closes out behind you and how it influences that. Because it's not just how you cut into the air, it's how the air leaves you as well, which really matters with aerodynamics. But talk to the guys at Envy. They will be able to let you know.
Question for me. Why doesn't TR have a booth that goes to big events? So it's a great question. Couple reasons. First, TR doesn't demo really well for someone who has no clue what it is. They walk up and they see this graph and they we don't know their FTP. We can't give them an hour workout. We can show some stuff, but it's not the conversion rate of people walking into your booth, I feel, isn't as high. It doesn't mean it's not the most effective cycling training tool.
Right.
Because it is, but the pitch to someone who's just cold, it's hard to do. But then what you do is you figure out, you write all this stuff down. If you own a company for marketing, you should do this. So how much money does it cost in time to send people to the place, to build the booth, to pay for the booth at the place?
Expensive.
Which are not cheap.
Food and travel. And then you say, okay, if we do that, what's the lifetime value of a customer and how many customers do we have to get? And then you figure out what's your conversion rate. So for every person that walks into your booth, what percentage of those people do you have to convert to get that lifetime value back to get it?
Which in most cases, you would be extremely fortunate if you were getting a 1 to 100, like extremely fortunate.
Well, maybe not. I don't know about that though, but
I do.
You look at the numbers. I think we did it for Sea Otter, and it was something like just the amount of people we had to have walk into our booth was like more than one a minute.
Yes.
Or something like that, because it was very expensive to do the whole thing and salaries and stuff to go to Sea Otter. And then you go to Sea Otter, and there's not one person. Most of these things, you look around, the booths are empty most of the time, right? Like you're lucky to get one person every 5 minutes. So there's a brand awareness halo effect of just being there.
Certainly.
But especially with where we're at and not being, if we're a funded company and I just have to spend $3 million or $4 million a year on marketing, yeah, we do this and we just try to blanket. But we want to be more targeted and tactical with our marketing to be able to justify, not just say it's a halo brand. And that halo brand stuff only works if you blanket. You can't say I'm going to blanket at nationals and not do any other races during the year,
you're ineffective. You have to
Exactly.
be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll see us at specific events.
Yeah, you just see
but you see
our
us.
three faces. We all wear our shirts and we walk close together so it looks like a billboard.
Hold hands usually.
Chad's pretty wide. I'm working on it.
So that's absolutely, and the numbers in many cases don't add up for a lot of these brands that are at these things. But it's in many cases they don't have other marketing efforts that they're undertaking or anything else like that.
Or you look at like Shimano or SRAM, right? So
Yeah.
they're big companies. They're everywhere. Every race is sponsored by like one of them.
Yeah.
And that is especially as you get to higher and higher revenues, a great marketing strategy is you want to build that brand and
Of course.
yeah, but
also
small, though,
finding
you
an
can't
ideal
spend $20 million a year.
Finding an ideal opportunity too, right? They have bike racers at a race that are having mechanicals that, and also Shimano and SRAM, there's a 50-50 chance that every single person there has something of theirs.
And you walk into a booth and you look at a new Shimano group set and they can say, this saves this many watts, or this is now electronic, and everyone save grams. Everyone gets that instantly.
Right.
For someone who doesn't know about structured indoor cycling training,
There's a
or
lot to
that you can
explain.
even like pick up data from a power meter, people don't know what power meters are.
Yeah.
That's a long pitch.
A lot of education necessary.
Exactly.
Something else to keep in mind just with the Shimano SRAM side of things, the majority of what they're really there for, they're there with service, and they provide free service to anybody that owns Shimano stuff or free service to somebody that provides SRAM. Then they also have marketing efforts that go along with that. But in every case, it makes sense for them to be there at the very least to build that customer loyalty with the people that already have their stuff and to support them. So there are plenty of reasons why it makes sense for certain brands, not for others.
That's why you guys can all help us out, because we did a survey, number one way people find out about Trainerroad is their friends tell them.
Yep.
And your friend gets faster, and then they give you the kind of education, and you get into it. Much better than we've seen for internet ads or stuff like
Totally.
that. It's hard to explain
It's
it.
not like we haven't tried that.
Yeah.
So we have gone the booth route.
Yeah.
Just didn't yield much.
Yeah.
I guess last question, where are you going to do the live podcast at Leadville? To be decided at some point. We don't know entirely quite yet, but we'll figure that
I
out.
wonder if we could do it like the coffee shop.
Yeah, we'll find
They could
we'll find a place.
Okay.
It'll be a good place. That'd be cool. So stay tuned for the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group for that. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and thanks for submitting the questions while you were watching live. Remember, you can join us in that Facebook podcast group. You can ask other questions there, unite with all the other podcast listeners or cyclists that are just in there asking those questions and providing answers. And you can like and share this podcast. I was surprised we did a survey of this podcast group, and only 60% of people have ever reviewed the podcast. And a pretty